Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another horrible case. The case of Rita Curran. On the night of July 20, 1971, at 1:30 a.m., 20-year-old Beverly Lanphier returned to her new apartment after a night out with friends. She had just enjoyed a late-night party in the friendly community of Burlington, Vermont. When she arrived, she immediately noticed that the door to her room was slightly open. Beverly entered the bedroom and was horrified to find her roommate Rita unconscious on the floor, her face covered in bruises. She quickly called her two other roommates, who were home but unaware of any trouble there. Beverly then promptly contacted the police to report the situation. Police Richard Goro quickly arrived at the address provided along with paramedics. However, by the time they arrived, Rita had already passed away. The apartment was now considered a crime scene. While waiting for backup, Police Richard worked to separate the room from the roommates and secure the crime scene. The roommates were also present, including Beverly, a married couple, Carrie Duane, 19, and her partner Paul Robinson, 20, who had recently moved in with her. The police then arrived to begin a formal investigation. Officer Richard remained at the door until 7:00 a.m. He was then assigned to interview the neighbors in the building. Unable to speak to anyone on the second floor, he went to the third floor to speak to William DeRoos and his new wife, Michelle. Michelle told Officer Richard that she had not seen or heard anything unusual until she noticed the police cars. Both she and William claimed that they had not heard anything unusual. When questioned further, Michelle said that she had been awake since around 1 a.m., but had not heard any strange noises, which William confirmed. Other witnesses nearby were interviewed, but they did not provide any useful information. Dr. Harris, the medical examiner, later submitted his initial report, stating that Rita had suffered severe head injuries, particularly on the left side, and that her body was covered in cuts and bruises with dried blood from multiple blows to the face and head with a blunt object. Her hair was disheveled, and police observed chunks of hair pulled off along with skin on the floor. An autopsy later confirmed that Rita had died of asphyxiation due to manual strangulation. Experts found recent cuts and bruises on her lower body, indicating that her killer had assaulted her extensively. Toxicology tests showed no alcohol in her system. Experts observed that Rita's nightgown was torn. Torn underwear was found under her left leg. In addition, the police collected the blood-soaked bedsheet and bedspread along with the Afghan blanket. A cigarette butt was found under Rita's right elbow. Beverly told the police that Rita always took great care of her appearance. She went to bed with her hair in curlers to prepare for the next day. Rita was taking a summer course at the University of Vermont and worked part-time as a hotel maid. To become more social, she had recently joined a group of local hairdressers and practiced with them until about 10:00 p.m. every night, including the evening of July 19. When police found Rita's hair curlers tossed in the corner of her room next to the stereo, they noticed that they had been forcefully removed from her head. The police believed that the killer had yanked the curlers off during the attack, but they were unsure of the reason behind it. Curtains that had been hung on a window near the corner of the room were now torn and lying on the floor. A small amount of soil was found, prompting police to collect soil samples from the basement of the shared living space to compare with the soil on Rita's room floor. Additionally, experts removed a large piece of wood from the bedroom door that appeared to have something similar to blood on it. Police also searched the hardwood floor for fingerprints. Rita's roommates claimed they did not touch anything after seeing their friend, but their fingerprints were taken for records. Beverly, who was familiar with the common room, mentioned that the bed had been moved approximately 30 centimeters towards the left wall. Blood was discovered on the front door of the room. In the rooms occupied by Paul and Carrie, no notable evidence was found. There were no signs of disturbance in the living room, kitchen, or bathroom. except for blood located on the outside of the kitchen door. In the shared backyard and porch, there were no indications of forced entry. The investigation into Rita's murder began with a detailed examination of the crime scene. Police discovered drops of blood outside the back door. It is believed that the blood belonged to the killer, possibly from injuries sustained during the attack. The basement windows were still covered in cobwebs, which showed they hadn't been opened in a long time. Additionally, the back door of the basement was closed. Police spent some time examining the left side of the house but couldn't find any possible entry points. Police also noticed a gray trash can on the porch that was upside down and appeared to have been stepped on, with its contents scattered on the floor. They speculated that the trash can might have been used to look into the windows and observe inside. During the investigation at the crime scene, roommate Paul Robinson spoke to police. He mentioned that the night before, he had placed a small trash can on the back porch, intending to retrieve it later. However, the trash can was found overturned. Paul said that, as agreed between roommates, all the doors to the rooms were usually left open. He also noted that, as far as he knew, neither Beverly nor Rita smoked, and that all the roommates were close. After Paul was interviewed, police spoke with his wife, Carrie. She explained that Paul picked her up from work at 7:30 p.m., and they drove around town for a while. They returned home to change clothes and left again around 9:00 p.m. to have dinner at a hotel. At 2:15 a.m. from the hotel bar, they called Rita's roommate Beverly and invited her to join them for a drink. Beverly said that Rita was asleep in their shared room at that time, so Beverly didn't wake Rita and went to the bar with Paul and Carrie instead. Beverly left the apartment at 2:20 a.m. and was the last person to see Rita alive. About an hour after Beverly arrived at the hotel, Paul mentioned that he was feeling tired, so he and Carrie left the bar to go home and sleep. They returned to their apartment and remembered sitting in the living room for a while before going to their bedroom. They didn't notice anything unusual, but they observed that Rita and Beverly's door was open about half a meter. Beverly said she closed the door when she left because Rita was sleeping. This sequence of events led the police to determine that Rita was likely murdered within approximately 70 minutes between Beverly's departure and Paul and Carrie's return. Police suspected that the perpetrator was someone Rita knew, so they investigated all the men mentioned in the initial reports. After reviewing the evidence, they discovered that William DeRoos, 31, had previously met with police on at least 3 other occasions and lived on the 3rd floor of the building. He was also frequently mentioned in interviews by neighbors. William lived with his wife, and both provided alibis for each other, claiming they were home together and had not seen or heard anything unusual. 9 days after Rita's murder, on July 28, a confidential police informant identified William DeRoos as a potential suspect. The police decided to investigate William further. However, despite the informant's accusations and William's proximity to the crime scene, the police found no evidence linking him to the crime. Blood tests and DNA analysis were not used until 1980, and there was no strong incriminating evidence. As a result, the case was temporarily shelved. More than 10 years later, a team of investigators revisiting Rita's unsolved murder case decided to use new DNA testing technology to identify a possible suspect. The DNA taken from the cloning drug matched that of Ted Bundy, a death row inmate. Rita's sister even wrote to Bundy asking if he had killed Rita. In response, the FBI informed her that Bundy refused to confirm or deny his involvement in the case. In 1989, shortly before his execution, Ted Bundy was questioned by FBI agents and denied any involvement in Rita's case. Subsequent DNA testing showed no match between Bundy's DNA and the sample collected from Rita's bedroom. In 2014, police used a used cigarette left on Rita's bed, along with fingernail clippings and body fluids collected during Rita's autopsy, to be sent to the New York City Medical Examiner's Office for DNA testing. By late October 2014, police received a report stating that male DNA had been identified from the cigarette butt and was suitable for comparison, allowing entry into the database. However, the medical examiner's office reported that there was too little DNA to analyze, and the fingernail samples were not tested for undisclosed reasons, possibly due to budget constraints. In 2019, the nearly 50-year-old case was reinvestigated. Now that the police had a DNA profile, a long list of suspects was drawn up, which was compared by comparison. The cigarette sample was also compared to Rita's roommate Paul Robinson, but all of them were eliminated from the list of suspects. In August 2022, William Darris being included on the suspect list, his family's genetic background was compared to the cigarette DNA sample, and a match was found. Police re-interviewed the surviving roommates to find out if they knew William or his wife. Paul and Carrie, who were present at the scene, stated that they did not recall any significant interactions with their third-floor neighbors. Police were saddened to learn that Beverly had passed away. In September 2022, police traveled to Oregon to speak with William's then-wife. At the time of the murder, she was known by her legal name, Michelle, but had since changed it to Kylos Nagarjunu and was over 70 years old. She recalled meeting William in 1970, less than 2 years before the murder, and admitted that she didn't know much about him. She remembered him mentioning that he had been in prison twice in California, with the longest sentence being 3 years for armed robbery. The couple got married just 2 weeks before the murder at the home of their neighbors below. William's ex-wife stated that she did not remember ever knowing the neighbors or meeting them, and when shown a photo of Rita, she did not recognize her. The woman explained that during their relationship, William protected her until he became controlling, insisting that she should not work and should get pregnant as soon as possible. Now she remembers that William's main dream was to open a hair salon and have a large family with her. She stressed that she had never been afraid of him and asserted that William had never been violent towards her. She also stated that the change in his behavior could not have been due to alcohol or drugs, as he was abstinent and a devout Buddhist. Michelle recalled the police coming to her apartment in 1971. She said that the morning after the murder, her new husband, William, asked her not to reveal that he was not home at the time, fearing that his past and criminal record might make the police suspicious of him. Michelle noted that there had been an argument between them on the night of the murder, but she could not remember the details. She acknowledged that William had indeed left their apartment for a short time, coinciding with the time that Rita's roommate had also left. She recalled William describing his outing as a nice walk, and when he returned, he asked her not to mention his absence. The Michelle does not explain why she chose to keep important information a secret, likely to protect her marriage. Michelle remembers that while William was asleep, she was unsure about how long he had been gone. She did not recall anything unusual, but she remembered that she later slept next to him that night. The next morning, she noted that her husband slept longer than usual. She also could not recall what he was wearing that evening and was unsure if he had taken off any clothes. Nevertheless, she later admits that she was likely hiding the truth to protect her husband. In later interviews reflecting on their previous conversation, she acknowledges that the thought crossed her mind that William might have been involved in the crime. Michelle said that William smoked, but she could not remember the brand. Shortly after the murder, William suddenly moved to Thailand. When asked why he left without her, Michelle was confused and speculated that financial matters may have been a factor. Michelle then followed William to Thailand in about March 1972, about 10 months after the murder. By that time, William had become a Buddhist monk and was living in a monastery. Later, their marriage ended due to strict monastic rules prohibiting relationships. Because William did not sign the divorce papers, Michelle hired a lawyer and they completed the divorce in absentia. Police also interviewed William's third wife, Sarah, who had moved to San Francisco in July 1974, 3 years after Rita's murder. She had met William, her neighbor at the time, and he seemed interested in her. While William mentioned his previous marriage and his time in Thailand, he never explained why he left or shared details about his family background. The two married on November 19, 1974, but Sarah often felt insecure in the relationship. She recalled disturbing incidents. He once stabbed a mutual friend with a pocket knife without warning. He then returned home as if nothing had happened and never mentioned it again. In another incident, William nearly strangled Sarah during an argument. She also noted that William drank heavily and may have been taking medication for mental health issues that, if not properly managed, could have contributed to his reckless behavior. In 1978, Sarah discovered that William was unfaithful and decided to leave him. After she moved in with a new partner, William suddenly showed up at her house and acted strangely. Fortunately, he left the next day, and she never saw him again. William later died of a drug overdose in San Francisco in 1986, and his body was cremated. At the time, there was no evidence to support an investigation, but rumors of his guilt spread through the media. He died at the age of 83. Having escaped justice for his crimes and evaded accountability. The case of Estibaliz Carranza. Estibaliz was born in September 1978 in Guadalajara, Mexico. Her father is Armando, a psychologist, journalist, and author of books on esotericism. Her mother is Angela, Spanish. In 1983, at the age of 5, Estibaliz left Mexico with his parents and younger brother, settled in Barcelona, Spain. Estibaliz had a fairly normal childhood, although her father, Armando, was very strict and not easygoing. Her father's anger made her think of ways to get rid of him. Despite this, he let her study at prestigious schools and later supported her studies at the Autonomous University of Barcelona. As she grew up, she became sociable and had many friends. However, she also suffered from frequent mood swings and anger, during which she could become quite aggressive. As an adult, Estibaliz moved to Germany and lived in Munich for a while. She used her connections to find work, and she landed a job at an ice cream parlor in the nearby city of Nuremberg. She spoke German fluently, which helped her settle in easily, and her friendly demeanor made it easy for her to connect with the locals. While working at the ice cream parlor, she met her first husband, Holger Holz, who sold refrigerators and was part of the Krishna religious community. He was 14 years older than she, and a few weeks after they met, he proposed to her because he was passionately in love with her. They soon married and moved to Berlin. Estibaliz found various jobs, but her life was not fulfilling. Right after the wedding, she and her husband Holger had a conflict. Despite his successful career, but he began to insult and physically abuse her. Nevertheless, they continued their married life, and in 2000, they relocated to Vienna, Austria. In Vienna, they had the opportunity to start their own business, opening the ice cream parlor Schlee Cherry on the busy Oswald Gass Street. The ice cream shop quickly became famous with the locals. Nearby was the Iman hairdressing salon, and at the end of the building's lobby, a staircase led to apartments on the upper floors. There was also a basement entrance located under the stairs. Estibaliz and Holger made a large sum of money. However, he asked her to reimburse him for all the expenses they had spent in the first year of opening the ice cream shop. Estibaliz, ice cream shop owner, dedicated herself to her work and grow her store successfully. Meanwhile, her husband Holger has an interest in weapons technology, which causes more conflicts between the two. He asked her to join his Krishna religion, but she felt it was quite strange. In the end, she decided to follow this religion. Estibaliz's business has allowed her to get to know many people, including several men. Over the years, she had several lovers, some with her clients, others with suppliers, tourists, or neighbors. One of them was Manfred Hinterberger, 48, a representative of a company that manufactures industrial equipment, such as freezers, refrigerators, and ice cream machines. After many years of knowing each other, she started dating Manfred in 2008. She decides to divorce her husband, Holger, but he will only accept if she pays him the debt she owes. Since she did not want to pay the debts, they decided to live together in a small apartment. On April 27, 2008, after finishing the shift at the ice cream shop, Estibaliz returned home. Then, she had a heated argument with Holger, during which he hurled insults at her and accused her of cheating throughout their marriage. In a moment of anger, he threatened to take drastic action. While he was seated at the computer, facing away from her, she took the weapon and attacked him. After ensuring he was dead, she moved his body to the bathroom and left it there. She was sure the gunshots would be heard by the neighbors, which meant the police would soon arrive at her house. However, nothing happened. After waiting until nightfall, Estibaliz moved the body to the living room sofa and went to bed. 2 days later, she attempted to dispose of the body by setting it on fire. However, the smoke escaping from her apartment attracted attention, and a neighbor called the fire department. When they tried to enter her apartment, she stopped them, claiming everything was fine and that she had simply burned her lunch. A few days later, Estibaliz considered buying an electric saw. Although she didn't know how to use one, the store staff helped her learn. Upon returning home, she began dismembering the body, placing all the parts, including the head, into a bag and storing them in the freezer. Later, she transferred the remains into empty ice cream containers and covered them with cement. Next, she moved these containers to her ice cream shop and stored them in the basement freezer, where they were eventually discovered. Estibaliz's main motive for the crime was her frustration with her husband, Holger, refusing to move out of their apartment, and he refused divorce. Additionally, she had financial debts to him that she wanted to avoid repaying. As time passed, she continued to live her life normally, and no one seemed to notice Holger's disappearance. They had only been living in Austria for a short time, so they had very few friends here, so no one asked about him. If anyone asked about she will mention that he went to India. The regular customers at her ice cream shop didn't notice any change in her behavior, and no one suspected anything. Estibaliz's relationship with Manfred grew closer, and eventually they moved in together. She asked Manfred for money to help her business, and he gave her over $100,000, allowed her access to his bank accounts. However, he also wanted she to spend more time with him and to enhance her appearance. To achieve this, he pressured her to get plastic surgery, which she did not want. She had dreams of becoming a mother, but since he already had children, he couldn't help her fulfill that desire. Their relationship took a turn for the worse when Estibaliz discovered that Manfred had been having affairs with several other women. Feeling betrayed, she plotted her revenge. In preparation, she took shooting courses to improve the necessary skills. After completing the lessons, she felt ready to take action. To avoid leaving any evidence, she covered the floors and walls of their apartment with cling film. On the night of November 21, 2010, Estibaliz and Manfred returned from a joint trip and had sex. Afterward, she confronted he about his infidelity, but he denied it and fell asleep. In a moment of anger, she grabbed a gun and attacked him on the neck while he was sleeping. She left his body on the bed for the entire day before moving it to the bathroom. Using an electric saw, she cut the body into pieces, this time doing so with more care and skill. Estibaliz couldn't find any cement, so she decided to store the body parts in a refrigeration units in the basement. However, the unit couldn't fit the entire body, leaving her to hide most of the remains in her apartment, where she covered them with cat litter to minimize the smell of decomposition. After taking care of this, she continued with her daily routine. Meanwhile, Manfred's relatives began to ask about his whereabouts. Estibaliz told them that he had left for Thailand. They believed her story and stopped asking further questions. Shortly after, Estibaliz met Ronald, an Austrian man. He became her lover and the father of her unborn child. It seemed like her life was getting better. After all, she had managed to evade the consequences of her previous actions. Who would suspect that this charming and friendly woman, known by everyone as kind-hearted, was capable of such deeds? One day, workers repairing the building next to the Estibaliz ice cream shop entered its basement to access the sewer and discovered a damaged pipe. The building's common drainage system is located in the storage rooms, which are separate small basements used for storage. As they entered the basement, they smelled rottenness mixed with cat litter deodorant, which piqued their curiosity. They traced the odor to two large freezers that appeared to have been abandoned for a long time. When they opened the freezers, they were shocked to find containers filled with cement. Inside one freezer, they saw a hand and a leg, in the other, a head. They also discovered two rifles with optical sights, a woman's handbag containing a pistol, a beret, and a notebook with notes in Spanish. Terrified, they quickly left the basement. They informed the hairdresser next door about the discovery, urging her to call the police. When the police arrived, they searched the basement and found the remains of two dismembered bodies. One was in several pieces, while the other was just a severed head, all encased in cement-filled containers. The remains were sent to the forensic medical examination in Vienna. During the initial investigation, authorities were unable to determine who owned the basement. This was because the basement had not been used for a long time, and no other suspicious items were discovered. Investigators began to analyze the evidence they had collected. The next day, after the police arrived at the crime scene, Estibaliz came to work. A neighbor informed her about the discovery in the building's basement and mentioned that the police had started an investigation. This news made her extremely worried, forcing her to quickly return home. She locked the ice cream shop and put up a temporarily closed sign. As she left, her face betrayed her nervousness, looking very different from her usual demeanor. Naturally, her worried expression caught the attention of nearby residents, who began to mock her as she crossed the street towards the bus stop. They saw her take out her phone to make a call before getting into a taxi. Then, she went to the bank, withdrew all her money, and then purchased a plane ticket to Paris. However, she was never able to use this ticket. Austrian police were waiting for her at the airport. They were aware of the ticket she had purchased, but realized she had not checked in for her flight. Police issued a warrant for her arrest on Wednesday, June 8, 2011, after a search warrant was issued. Investigators believed the containers found in the basement belonged to her ice cream shop, but locating her became difficult since she had stopped using her mobile phone. Meanwhile, she remained in Vienna, took another taxi, and asked the driver to take her to northern Italy. She then traveled to the mountains and reached Basu, from where she continued on for another 6 kilometers to Talimatsu, where she decided to stay in a hotel for a few days. Before arriving, she asked the taxi driver to book a room for her because she couldn't do it herself. Later, the taxi driver saw her picture in the news and informed the police that he had driven her there. Unfortunately, by that time, it was already too late. In this city, Estibaliz stayed for one night before taking a train to Udine, which is 50 kilometers from Almaty. There, she met Ivan, a street artist, who noticed her crying at a cafe and offered his help. When he approached her to ask if she needed help, she told him about her problems, especially her husband's cruelty that forced her to leave home. Ivan invited her to stay in his apartment for a few days. She agreed, and he offered her the couch, while he slept in his bed. During her stay, Estebalas helped Ivan with cleaning, shopping, and cooking, and everything seemed fine, until he discovered her identity through a newspaper article. This revelation shocked and frightened he. He asked her to leave immediately, admitting that he knew she was evading the law. She denied his accusations. He then went to the nearest police station to inform them that Estebalas, a woman wanted by the authorities, was in his home. Ivan was surprised to find Estebalas waiting for the police at his house. She did not resist arrest. She was taken into custody as the primary suspect in several murders. She was arrested on June 10, 2011, at 7:30 a.m. in Udine, Italy. After her arrest, Estebalas was taken to the police station for questioning, where she confessed to 2 murders, one in 2008 and another in 2010. She used the same methods for both crimes, but claimed that the second murder was executed more skillfully. Meanwhile, Austrian authorities quickly requested her extradition, while in Italy, forensic experts identified the second victim as Manfred Hinterberger. During her interrogation, she attempted to justify her actions, saying that both men, Holger and Manfred, had subjected her to violence and cruelty. She felt very angry about the way they treated her. She described the murders as a response to the physical and psychological abuse she had suffered. Estebalas admitted that she had attacked Holger and Manfred on the head, then used an electric saw. She told investigators that she killed the first man, Holger, to improve her skills. She took shooting lessons and take a course on how to work with cement to prepare for the second murder, Manfred. At the time of her arrest in Italy, she was pregnant with Ronald's child, and during a medical examination, it was revealed that she was 2 months along. 14 days after her arrest, on June 24, 2011, Estebalas was extradited by an Austrian court and detained on suspicion of involvement in 2 murders. Her lawyer argued that although police testimony is considered legal evidence under Italian law, Austrian law is very different. He asked that it not be admitted as evidence in her case. He said he planned to sue several Austrian tabloids for making the accusations against her. Estebalas was arrested and held in a prison in Vienna until January 11, 2012, when she was taken to the hospital to give birth. After her son was born, he was immediately given to his father. From the start of the trial, Estebalas admitted her guilt, while the prosecution and psychiatrists portrayed her as a ruthless, manipulative, and selfish individual. Despite being educated and fluent in 3 languages, she committed extreme acts for her own benefit. The defense argued that Estebalas was a victim of her own emotions. They claimed she was under the influence of illegal drugs and prescribed medications, stating she took 5 different drugs 3 times a day, including antidepressants and treatments for schizophrenia. However, evidence showed that her actions were intentional. She testified that Manfred pressured her to undergo numerous cosmetic surgeries, including nose jobs and Botox, and forced her to exercise constantly to maintain her figure, despite her long 12-hour shifts at the ice cream parlor. Estebalas alleged that people mocked her, which became unbearable for her and ultimately led to her decision to kill Manfred. The psychiatrist explained that she simply didn't know how to reject men who made her unhappy. She resorted to an extreme solution. She believed the easiest way to deal with men who were no longer needed was to kill them. Whenever men brought her trouble or ridiculed her, she concluded that killing them was the best option. On November 22, 2012, Estebalas Carranza was found guilty of murdering Holger Holtz in 2008 and Manfred Hinterberger in 2010. She was sentenced to life imprisonment in a facility for the criminally insane. Along with her attorneys, she appealed the decision, but the sentence was upheld by the Higher Regional Court of Vienna on March 20, 2013. In November 2017, it was announced that Estebalas would be transferred from a women's prison in Lower Austria to a prison in the market town of Upper Austria. She was diagnosed with a serious personality disorder. She exhibited abnormal behavior and had a mindset akin to a princess seeking rescue from a prince, longing for a fictional world where she was the center of attention. At the time of her crime, Estibaliz was mentally stable, as she was not under the influence of drugs and was fully aware of her actions. Psychiatrists expressed concern that she might commit serious crimes again after her release. During a psychiatric evaluation, she stated, "Some part of her brain is red, and when it activates, she can't control myself." The case of Andres Mendoza. On May 14, 2021, 34 years old Reina Amador went missing. She was last seen north of Atizapán de Zaragoza in the state of Mexico. Before her disappearance, she had informed her husband Bruno that she was going to Zocalo Square in the historic center to buy mobile phone parts. She was accompanied by family friend Andres Mendoza, a 74 years old man whom she had known for many years. When Bruno returned home at 8 p.m., Reina had not yet come back, and only 2 of their daughters were at home. He tried calling but she didn't answer. At 11 p.m., Bruno went to Andres's house to inquire about her, but Andres said he had no information about Reina and had not seen her all day. As a former police chief, Bruno immediately decided to report his wife missing and went to the police station to file a report. No one expected this case would become one of the most notorious and tragic in Mexico. On Saturday, May 15, Bruno asked to see the security camera footage. The recording showed his wife, Reina, walking down the street where Andres lived, but she never left Andres's house. This was the last time she was seen, at 8:40 p.m. Bruno went back to Andres's house, accompanied by his brother-in-law. They knocked on the door, but Andres insisted he knew nothing about Reina. Bruno asked him to open the door to ask a few questions. He opened the door slightly, and then Bruno forced his way inside. He said that Bruno wouldn't find anything there, but Bruno sensed that something was off. The lights were off, and everything in the house seemed normal at first. However, Bruno discovered cardboard boxes in Andres's room. His intuition told him to move the boxes, and underneath was an entrance to the basement. There, he was shocked to find body parts in several buckets. On the dining table, there were also remains, including a face and scalp that had been separated from the skull. Upon closer inspection, Bruno finds Reina's belongings and realizes that the remains are hers. As all this was happening, Andres attempted to escape. He rushed out of the house, but was quickly apprehended, prompting Bruno to call the police. 2 police squads, located nearby, quickly arrived at the scene. Confused neighbors, not understanding why Andres was being handcuffed, tried to assist him. The officers brought him back inside and seated him on a chair. Bruno questioned Andres about his actions. One police officer contacted the prosecutor's office, as a search warrant was necessary. During the investigation, a dismembered body was discovered, and authorities suspected there might be more victims. This incident quickly became a hot topic nationwide. Friends and acquaintances of Andres were shocked. They insisted he was a calm and peaceful individual, even serving as the president of his neighborhood civil council. When police executed a search warrant at Andres's home, they involved specialists from various fields, including criminologists, anthropologists, doctors, and forensic experts. They focused on the room with access to the basement. In addition to the bed, there were other items in the room, such as clothes, a wardrobe, and a few photographs. When police went down to the basement, they discovered the dismembered body of a woman, with her feet resting on a chair. Nearby, they found knives, a saw, and a machete. On a table, there were severed limbs in a pool of blood. Additionally, plastic containers held body parts and organs, with some preserved in salt. The remains of a face and scalp, with the hair removed, were also located in the basement. Initially, investigators think there is only one victim, but they uncovered more evidence, including 12 cell phones, 12 SIM cards, cosmetics, women's clothing, wallets, shoes, necklaces, and various women's accessories. Several videotapes and several notebooks with gruesome notes were found, including list of women. In addition, the police also recovered 9 sets of keys, 2 scales, election documents, and more than a dozen photos of the victims. The most alarming discovery was the well-preserved faces and scalps, with hair removed. This evidence led police to suspect they were dealing with a serial killer. Andres was then taken to Barrientos prison, where he was held before his trial. He expressed a desire to tell the truth and confessed to killing Reina. She worked at a cell phone store just a short distance from Andres's house. He often visited her at work and helped her out, leading many neighbors to believe they were related, with some even spreading rumors that he was her uncle. On the day she disappeared, they had arranged to meet and buy supplies for Reina's business, as they had done previously, which made her trust him. At 5 o'clock in the morning, she told her husband Bruno that she was going shopping with Andres. According to Andres's testimony, Reina came to his house and they began to argue. He said he loved she and asked her to have sex with him, which led to an argument. When she refused, he took a knife and cut her neck. After she fell to the floor, he began to beat her. Although she was still alive, he stabbed her in the chest multiple times. After killing her, he dismembered her body and put it in boxes to take to the basement. In the basement, he removed the face from the skull, stating it was so beautiful that he wanted to keep it forever. He soaked the remains in salt to prevent flies from appearing. This is something he admitted to. He also said that he buried 4 other women in the basement. However, notes in his notebook and photos show something else. One of Andres's handwritten notes, dated December 17, 1974, described one of his victims who lived on Colonia Hank Gonzalez Street in Ecatepec. According to the note, she went to another world at 5 a.m. The note detailed the weights of various body parts. The head weighed 4.5 kilograms, the chest 1.5 kilograms, each rib and the right arm 14 kilograms, and the pancreas, liver, and heart weighed 4 kilograms. This victim was 28 years old. The gruesome details left a deep impression on investigators, who had no idea how significant this case would become. In addition, at the crime scene, the police discovered a videotape that Andres had filmed, recording each murder. Many people could not understand his thinking. For numerous investigators, this case was the most horrifying they had ever encountered. The developments of the incident were unbelievable, like a horror movie. A few days later, the police began dismantling the foundation of the building to check if there were really graves in the basement. Civilian experts joined the police to assist in the excavation, continuing to search for remains and related evidence. Initially, excavation began in the backyard near the kitchen, where numerous bones were discovered. Diggings then continued in the main room measuring 30 square meters, believed to be the entrance to the basement. During this process, several skulls and bones were found. A report indicated the discovery of 1,137 bone fragments, belonging to at least 4 individuals. The investigation is still ongoing every day, and experts are surprised by the new findings. During this time, Andres confessed to occasionally consuming parts of his victims' bodies. This has led to rumors that he was involved in cannibalism, which has alarmed neighbors. They recalled that Andres had previously sold meat, which explains how he was able to meticulously cut up the bodies of his victims. Neighbors said that after the butcher shop closed, Andres would occasionally go from house to house in the area selling meat, allegedly sourced from Iztapalapa. They began to suspect that he was lying and was actually selling the victims' meat. They noted that he sold this meat at unusually low prices and often gave them more meat than they asked for. Andres was born in Oaxaca on November 29, 1947. Neighbors recalled that he moved to Atizapan in the 1980s. He lived in the same house as his sister, who asked him to collect rent from the tenants. He was known for being calm and reserved. 9 years before the investigation began, he opened a butcher shop, which allowed him to meet many people, including politicians. He served as the president of the Civil Council of Atizapan and was a member of a political party. He was generous and caring to the residents of the area. He often visited people's homes to understand their needs. Neighbors viewed him as a role model, and no one suspected him. There was another perspective to consider. Some people described Andres as depraved and having an unpleasant appearance. He frequently visited women's homes, saying he wanted to help them, but often had more intimate intentions. He was known as an older man who spent time in bars, drinking and socializing with women. In the building where he lived, one room was rented to a couple with a small child, and another to a doctor. None of them noticed anything suspicious about him. Among the documents found in the building was a file for Norma Jimenez, who had been missing since August 6, 2011. She has light brown skin, a healthy figure, wide hips, a bruise on her right cheek, and a vertical scar on her abdomen from surgery. She was 39 years old when she went missing. On the day Norma disappeared, she went to work as usual in Barragán from 2:00 p.m. to 10:00 p.m. At around 10:15 p.m., she called her family to say she was on her way home. Unfortunately, she never came home. The reason was that Andres invited her to his house, promising a good payment. Instead, he stabbed her in the heart, dismembered her body, and buried the remains in his backyard. Another of his victims was a 20-year-old woman who worked at the Marina Bar. She was similar in appearance to Norma and was also short. She was last seen leaving her home on April 7, 2012. Andres stated that in the same year, he met two girls named Adrenaline and Gardenia, who also worked at the Barragán bar. He confessed that he took them to his home, and when they refused to have sex with him, he killed them and buried their bodies in the basement. In 2016, Flor Vizcaíno, a 38-year-old woman, left her home and never came back. She disappeared on October 16, and since then, there has been no information about her. It was only when police searched Andres's home that they found her papers. Flor was a mother of two teenage daughters and worked as a waitress. She was divorced and her daughters were staying with their father that weekend. She left home at 11 a.m. and sent messages to her daughters on Facebook that same day. As hours went by without her return, her family reported her missing. Flor's portraits were posted on social media, but nothing came of it. At work, she met Andres, who often invited her to lunch and gave her gifts. However, she refused to start a relationship with him, and this is believed to be the reason he killed her. At Andres's home, documents belonging to Rubisheli Gagos, 32, were found. She went missing on July 20, 2019, and was last seen at a restaurant, a moment that was captured on a security camera. She had a 5-year-old son, and she working at a bank. In her free time, she works as a delivery person for the Uber food delivery service. That day, despite having the day off, she decided to make deliveries to earn extra money. Her family became concerned when she did not meet her older sister at the airport as planned. When her sister went to her apartment, her sister found only her son, who had been left alone for 5 days in a locked apartment. The missing report of Rubisheli was filed on July 27. Her motorcycle was later found in the Shang Aviar area, but there were no signs that she had been there. Andres chose attractive women as his targets. If they rejected him, he would lure them to his home, claiming he wanted to help them. When they arrived, he would gain their trust first, then secretly pull out a knife and stab them in the heart and neck. Once they stopped moving, he would dismember them. Because the women were beautiful, he removed their faces and scalps to keep them. He also cut up parts of their bodies to eat later, using his skills as a butcher. The remaining parts were soaked in salt and buried in various locations around his house, such as the kitchen, backyard, or basement. He covered the graves with a thick layer of cement to mask the smell. After weeks of investigation, the police discovered 3,787 skeletons. Forensic experts said the skeletons belonged to at least 17 people. The police then began reviewing 600 folders related to missing persons cases from Oaxaca and nearby areas over the last 31 years. The skeletons that were found underwent a thorough cleaning process, after which it was possible to determine which parts of the body they belonged to, allowing an approximate number of victims to be established. While the investigation was ongoing, Andres was transferred from Barrientos prison to Gudalbaya prison due to threats from other inmates who wanted to kill him for his crimes. Several days later, relatives of one of the missing women approached police to provide their DNA samples to compare with the DNA from the remains found. On December 2, 2017, March Duranta, 33, left her home, a few blocks away from Andres's home, at 8:00 a.m. She went to a bank branch to make some transfers and took public transportation that went to the El Campanario area. That day, her eldest son, who was 15, called her twice, and she answered him, also giving her location. However, she then stopped answering his calls. A few hours later, when she did not return home, her husband and 3 children visited the police to report her disappearance. Since that day, they have not known anything. Marta had met Andres a few months earlier. He had offered her a job as a cleaner at the Civic Council office. When her family learned of her disappearance, they feared the worst, believing she had fallen victim to Andres. Among Andres's victims were Maria Maris and her 7-year-old son, Edgar. They went missing on December 24, 2014. Since that day, neighbors had not seen them. Her sister Matilda explained that she was a single mother who sold candy from a cart with her son. Andres had offered to let her keep the cart at his house. The day Maria and her son went missing, they left home and told their family that they would not be going far. Hours later, the family started searching for them in the streets. The family gathered information from people living in the area, and only one person had seen them on the day of their disappearance. That person was Andres. He even offered to go with Matilda to the police so report Maria and Edgar missing. One of the neighbors who ran a grocery store recalled that a few years ago, Andres had offered her tickets to a local festival and convinced her to go. Another neighbor remembered that Andres promised to buy her a cell phone if she visited him, but she declined. In total, 4,300 skeletons were found, including 18 women and 1 child. This figure was released after the completion of excavations at the crime scene. These skeletons allowed investigators to identify 19 victims. Experts conducted extraction, purification, quantitative assessments, and typing to create genetic profiles for the victims. This genetic material was then compared with DNA samples from at least 11 families. The analysis resulted in matches for 6 cases, identifying at least 6 victims, while 13 other victims still await identification. Investigations continue, and the police are searching another house owned by Andres for additional victims. On March 18, 2022, Andres Mendoza was sentenced to life in prison. In Reina Amador's case, he also had to pay more than $50,000 in compensation to her family. Although 19 victims' remains have been found, it is believed there may be more, as Andres claimed to have killed at least 30 women. It is important to remember that serial killers often act normally so as not to arouse suspicion. They can easily gain people's trust, are often well-liked, and hide their true nature behind a friendly facade. Stay vigilant. A successful man, whose career began with a business background, suddenly fell into the abyss of crime when he plotted to harm the wife he once loved. The Dino Guglielmelli case is not only a story of family conflict, but also exposes the dark side of relationships marked by power and manipulation. When love turns to hate, the level of despair a person can endure is astonishing. This case reveals a dark aspect of the human soul that no one expected. Let's explore the dangerous developments behind the story of Dino. Millionaire Dino Guglielmelli and model Monica Olson were an attractive and extravagant couple, seemingly well-matched in personality. Their marriage lasted 9 years, but as their feelings for each other diminished, they decided to divorce. Monica Olson was born in 1981 in a small town in Canada. She came from a respectable and educated family and had aspirations of becoming a model from a young age. As a teenager, she frequently attended auditions, appeared in advertisements, and participated in fashion shows. Monica was not only photogenic, but also intelligent, holding a master's degree in international finance and speaking 7 languages. She worked diligently to succeed in the modeling industry, first moving to New York and eventually to Los Angeles to pursue acting. In the early 2010s, Monica had a small role in the film Chick Where to Meet Moms. During the summer of 2003 in Los Angeles, 42-year-old millionaire Dino Guglielmelli met 20-year-old Monica. Dino was captivated by Monica's beauty and sought a serious relationship with her. Dino was born in 1961 in Washington State and grew up in a large, close-knit family with 6 siblings. He began working at a young age, helping his parents on their farm. He had a passion for music and dreamed of starting his own rock band. Eventually, he dropped out of college and moved to Los Angeles to pursue his dream of becoming a rock star. However, his music career did not bring in much money. At 20, Dino took a job as a cleaner at a waste disposal plant. Over the next 10 years, he worked his way up from cleaner to office manager and then to manager. In his spare time, Dino studied business and aimed to start his own venture. At 30, he launched a company that produced food additives and organic cosmetics. He believed that everyone wants to look young and healthy for as long as possible. His confidence in his business idea paid off. It became quite successful. At its peak, Dino's company operated 4 factories, employed around 300 people, and generated approximately $48 million in annual revenue. He enjoyed a life of luxury, owning expensive real estate and cars. Dino was previously married and had a son and a daughter, but his first marriage ended in divorce. At 42, the millionaire met Monica and fell in love with her immediately. He courted her, spoiled her, and showered her with gifts. After 6 months of dating, they went to Italy, where he proposed unexpectedly. Despite their age difference, Monica agreed to marry him. In 2004, they had a luxurious wedding in New York, and both radiated happiness. However, Dino's relatives were suspicious and thought Monica was only after his money. After the wedding, Dino and Monica moved into a beautiful mansion in Valencia, California. Their home was 650 square meters and featured 6 bedrooms, a large kitchen, a living room, and a spacious area for children. The property was over 1 hectare, complete with a swimming pool filled with seawater, a small spa, and a guest house. Initially, married life was very happy for them. They lived with Dino's older children, while he focused on his business and Monica worked as a model. In 2005, when Monica became pregnant, she paused her modeling career. They soon welcomed their daughter, Vendela, and 2 years later, their second daughter, Sienna, was born. Monica was completely immersed in motherhood, but as the years passed, she realized that family was not all she wanted to devote her life to. In 2008, with her husband's support, she launched her own line of organic cosmetics called Skin by Monica Olson. She also began to gradually return to her modeling and acting career, hiring a nanny to help care for her children in their luxurious home. By 2011, Monica's career took off. She frequently traveled to Hollywood for filming, flew to New York, and worked with top designers in Milan. Often she returned home late at night when her daughters were already asleep and left early in the morning for filming again. During this time, Monica's cosmetics line became very popular, and two major retail chains agreed to feature her products in their stores. Monica's friend admitted that she wanted to become more financially independent and not depend on her millionaire husband, Dino. However, Dino noticed Monica's rising fame and became frustrated with her frequent absences. He preferred that she stay home, raise their children, and manage the household. Dino's older brother, Gino Guglielmelli, lived with Dino and Monica for 6 months and noticed issues in their relationship. Both Dino and Monica had strong personalities and were unwilling to compromise. Dino didn't want Monica to take part in photo shoots and started to control her, which made him increasingly domineering and aggressive. Eventually, Monica, who owned the company, decided to shut it down, leading to a halt in the supply of their organic cosmetics to stores. Dino also quit his job and increasingly spent time in clubs. By the time he turned 50, he fulfilled a childhood dream by forming his own rock band as the lead vocalist. He dyed his hair black and started wearing nail polish. He told Monica that this was his way of expressing himself and that she shouldn't be afraid, but his new look frightened her. Monica confided in her friends that his behavior had become erratic. One day, Dino fired the nanny, who was very much loved by his daughters. He was uncomfortable with how close the nanny was to Monica and felt she was too devoted to her. By the end of 2011, his relationship with Monica had deteriorated. The couple was constantly arguing and could no longer live together. Dino filed for divorce and moved into a guest house on his luxurious property to reduce contact with Monica while still being legally married. During this time, he began dating various women, not waiting for the official divorce. He had several mistresses and was open about his infidelities. Meanwhile, Dino also confided in his friend Rick Furman, a 40-year-old businessman and former military man with connections. Dino expressed his desire to end things with Monica as soon as possible. He and Rick, who were business partners supplying the military with vitamins and nutritional supplements, had developed a trusting friendship. Dino expressed his concerns to Rick about Monica having affairs with both men and women. He criticized her parenting, mentioning her heavy drinking and addictive use. He confided in Rick that he feared losing his assets and custody of his daughters. He was also unwilling to pay Monica the $5,000 monthly child support. He handed Rick a copy of Monica's car keys, along with details of her whereabouts. Dino requested Rick to plant addictives in Monica's car and notify the police, intending for her to be arrested and deported to Canada. Not long after, Dino submitted paperwork showing his company was financially struggling, which led to a reduction in alimony from $5,000 to $2,500. He consulted a divorce lawyer, who recommended that Dino leave Monica alone. The lawyer argued that fighting would ultimately be futile and advised Dino to just pay the alimony and focus on his own life. Frustrated, he remained unwilling to accept losing to Monica. He did not want to give her his daughters, and he did not want to share his business with her. Dino repeatedly asked his friend for help in getting rid of Monica. One day, he met Rick and told him that he had infected Monica with HIV, claiming that she was now seriously ill and would soon die of AIDS. This news made Rick smile, and Dino felt happy, believing that this punishment was enough for Monica. However, in early 2012, the situation changed. In January, Dino and Monica had another argument at their mansion, which their daughters witnessed. During the fight, Monica became frightened, took the girls to her room, and locked the door. Unsure of what to do, she called the police for help. However, Dino had already called 911 first, claiming he had been hit in the face and showing the police a photo of small scratches on his neck. The police sided with Dino and arrested Monica, taking her to the police station. She spent a day in a cell with dangerous criminals. Soon, a case of misdemeanor and domestic violence was opened. Later that month, Dino obtained a restraining order against Monica, forcing her to move out of their mansion. Dino's ex-wife, Latia Devine, revealed that during their divorce, Dino accused her of domestic violence and falsely claimed she used illegal addictives. Dino was determined to keep custody of their children and succeeded in doing so. After the divorce, Latia lost custody of the children, the family home, and their joint business that produced food additives and cosmetics. Latia described Dino as calculating, mean, and heartless, believing he had slandered both her and Monica for his own gain. Unlike Latia, Monica decided to fight back. After 13 months, she proved her innocence, was cleared of all domestic violence charges, and was allowed to reunite with her daughters. In a fit of rage, Dino contacted Rick, asking him to make Monica disappear from his life forever. Dino frequently reminded Rick, calling him 5 to 10 times a week, that he needed to eliminate Monica quickly. He wanted it to appear as though she had died due to addictive-related violence. He wished for her death to be painful and brutal, even envisioning her head being severed and her body discarded in a ditch. On October 1, 2013, Dino and Rick met for lunch at a cafe. At that time, Dino knew Monica was on vacation in Mexico. During their meal, Rick informed Dino that he had hired someone in Mexico and that Monica would be dead within a few hours. When Rick questioned how the daughters would cope without their mother, Dino dismissed Rick's concerns, insisting he was a good father and would find them a new, caring mother, someone much better than Monica. The friends then talked about payment. Dino promised to pay Rick $80,000 for a planned crime. He wanted to see Monica's murder reported in the newspapers. Their meeting lasted about an hour and a half, but only 15 minutes were spent discussing the crime. After the meeting, Rick said goodbye to Dino and went home. However, Rick knew that Dino would never read about Monica's death in the newspapers because he had already contacted the police. Their entire conversation in the cafe was recorded on a dictaphone that Rick had hidden under the table. Additionally, there were undercover police officers at other tables in the cafe watching them closely. Monica was thankful to Rick for not killing her. She had been hiding in a hotel in California, waiting for Dino to be arrested. On October 52, 2015, Dino was arrested at his luxurious mansion in Valencia, in front of his daughters. He was charged with attempted murder. Dino denied the charges, claiming that Rick had set him up to take over his business. He accused Rick of wanting to kill Monica so she wouldn't interfere with their business dealings, stating that Rick often complained about Monica trying to terminate their contracts with the military. While Dino was in prison, he offered a cellmate money to meet Rick. When Rick learned of this, he became scared and decided to leave California and hide. Prosecutors also discovered that Dino had secretly transferred $4.5 million abroad and was planning to escape the country with his children, but his plans fell through. As a result, he was moved to solitary confinement and prohibited from using a mobile phone. Regarding Rick Furman, the authorities was revealed during the investigation that he had served only 1 year in the Army and had a troubled military career. He was wounded and subsequently demobilized. There were some unusual aspects related to Rick in the case. For instance, the authorities was found that Rick had deceived Dino multiple times by claiming they had signed a military contract for food supplement supplies. Rick admitted to forging a signature to convince Dino that a significant commercial deal was forthcoming, hoping to distract him from negative thoughts and lift his spirits. Fortunately for Monica, Rick did not harm her. He tricked Dino into believing that this would make Dino leave Monica alone and calm down. Prosecutors thought that Dino and Rick were a bad match. They had done business together and had been friends for a long time. The judge described Rick as a chameleon. Although there were suspicions that Rick was a fraud, he was not charged with any crimes. When Dino's trial began, he continued to deny his guilt, claiming he was the victim in this situation. According to Dino, His only mistake was working too hard and trusting his friend, who turned out to be a traitor. The judge offered Dino a plea deal. Facing the possibility of life in prison, he could significantly shorten his sentence by accepting responsibility. Dino agreed and pleaded guilty to attempted second-degree murder, explaining that he could not refuse the deal because of his mother's request. In 2014, Dino Guglielmelli was convicted and received a 9-year prison sentence. Monica was dissatisfied with this outcome, stating that her life was worth more. During the court proceedings, she expressed, "The mere intent to kill is already a crime. What if I try to shoot someone but miss by half an inch? Am I still a criminal, or does the missed shot make me less guilty?" Did Dino become less of a criminal because Rick intervened? After the verdict, Monica officially divorced Dino. She realized that her primary focus now was raising their daughters, Vendela and Sienna. Following their divorce, Monica inherited a mansion in Valencia from Dino. However, she felt unsafe living in such luxury and was anxious about every little noise. Consequently, she sold the property for $3 million and purchased a more modest home for herself and her daughters. Monica attempted to restart her cosmetics business, but it was not successful. She feels that without the turmoil caused by Dino, she could have achieved a brilliant career and true success. Dino's company, Creations Garden, was sold at auction, and the proceeds were used to pay off debts. Dino served his prison sentence in California and was released in 2021. The end of the Dino Guglielmelli case is a cautionary tale of the dire consequences of ambition and immorality. A successful businessman with a multi-million-dollar company, he ended up in trouble with the law when he tried to resolve personal conflicts with violence. This story not only highlights the importance of the law in protecting people from dangerous schemes, but also reminds us that greed and selfishness can lead to the downfall of any success, no matter how great. The case of Yancey Knoll. On the evening of August 31, 2012, Yancey Knoll left work early to head home. He got into his old Subaru station wagon and was about to merge onto Interstate 5 when he stopped at a traffic light. At that moment, a BMW pulled up next to him, driven by a young man. Suddenly, a shot was fired, followed by several more. Yancey was killed instantly, and the entire incident happened so quickly that he had no chance to react. Witnesses at the scene immediately called 911. This incident event sent shockwaves through Seattle, Washington. At present, the cause of the shooting is still unknown. Yancey's friends said that he had no enemies. He was a kind, polite person and never had conflicts with anyone. He clearly did not deserve such a fate. An outdoor enthusiast, he loved hiking and enjoyed wine, working as a beverage specialist. No one believed that he could be involved in any conflicts. He was known to be kind, even shy, and always careful in communication, including when interacting with passers-by. No one believed that he could argue with anyone, which would provide a motive for a murder. But what was the reason for the shooting? The police need to find out. The attack occurred at 7:00 p.m., while it was still light outside and traffic was heavy. The attacker attacked Yancey at very close range. The shooting was done with great precision, indicating that he was confident in his actions. Fortunately, no other road users were injured, indicating that Yancey was the sole target of the attack. Other drivers, who unknowingly witnessed the incident, only heard a series of rapid gunshots. Then the BMW abruptly moved into oncoming traffic at a red light. Meanwhile, the Subaru remained stationary, with its engine running. Two other drivers, realizing something was wrong, pursued the shooter, but he quickly escaped. Other drivers approached the Subaru and found the driver inside bleeding. Paramedics confirmed that the driver, Yancey Knoll, died from 4 head injuries, with 1 wound to the temple. He was killed instantly, leaving him no chance to survive. A fifth bullet missed its target and was later found in the apartment of a 92-year-old woman, Patricia Schulmeister. It had gone through her window, hit a chandelier, and shattered a picture of a cat on the wall. She was lucky to escape, otherwise she could have been a victim of the gunman. After discovering the bullet, she went outside where police were investigating the crime scene and handed the bullet to an officer. It was later identified as a 9mm round, likely from a Glock pistol. This evidence became crucial for investigators, as they had no other leads at that time. Witnesses did not see the attacker's face and did not remember the BMW's license plate number. Initially, it was thought that the murder was a targeted attack, suggesting someone wanted to harm Yancey. However, he seemed to have no enemies. Even his friends did not remember any conflicts. He had never been arrested for a crime, which was confirmed by acquaintances, relatives, and police databases. The investigation could have taken a long time due to the lack of evidence. The only clue the police had was a bullet found in Patricia's apartment. In addition, the driver of the BMW attacked Yancey through the passenger window. Broken glass from the car was still on the road. As a result, the only information investigators had was that a BMW had a broken passenger window. During witness interviews, more information about the car involved in the incident was gathered. One driver reported seeing a silver BMW run a red light. The car was a nice convertible and had left the scene with the top down. The witness also reported that the car had chrome wheels and that a middle-aged, dark-haired man was inside. Based on the witness's testimony, an illustrator drew a portrait of the suspect. Although this was a weak clue, it was still crucial in tracking down the attacker. The image was posted on the police website within weeks of the incident, helping to create a composite sketch. Additionally, video footage from street surveillance cameras was obtained, but the quality was very poor. The cameras were positioned far away, capturing the BMW, but the license plate was not readable. Unfortunately, detectives had no other leads. The description of the suspect was shared with all police departments, and the traffic police began stopping all similar BMWs in the city. After the brutal murder, the police checked hundreds of cars and questioned hundreds of drivers who looked like the dark-haired man driving the silver car. On September 14, an unidentified woman contacted the police and mentioned Thomas Dean Bowman, who lived 10 blocks from the scene of the attack. She suspected that he might be involved in the attack on Yancey. Detectives found a photo of Thomas Dean and found that he closely matched the sketch of the suspect. So investigators began to carefully monitor him. However, it seems he is not someone capable of becoming a cold-blooded killer. Thomas Dean is a 29-year-old man, educated and a talented engineer. Since he was 12 years old, he has been called a genius. He attended college, and by the age of 20, he had started his own business, pouring his heart into it. His company, Wake Industries, specialized in robotics and was thriving at the time of the events. Thomas Dean also enjoyed a happy personal life. In 2007, he met Jennifer Palm at an educational seminar. She was a successful dentist. Their relationship went through many challenges, but after a year, they decided to get married. Friends say they understand and support each other. Thomas Dean was described as intelligent, sociable, friendly. Those who knew him could not believe that he was capable of such cruelty. However, investigators continued to gather information about Thomas Dean. They discovered that he owned a silver BMW similar to the one being sought. However, it was unclear if he was still using it. To find out, they followed him, but he didn't drive the car during that time. One day, his garage door was lifted, revealing a silver convertible sports car inside. This evidence led to Thomas Dean's arrest on September 21, 2012. As he was getting ready for work, police handcuffed him and took him to the police station, where he waited 2 hours for questioning. During the wait, he had a snack and coffee, appearing calm, but quickly became upset that his work time was being wasted. Thomas Din's wife was also taken into custody and interrogated in a nearby room. Throughout the process, she answered most of the questions with the phrase, "she not sure," neither confirming nor denying any information. It was easy to see that she was hiding something. The interrogation lasted over 4 hours. Meanwhile, detectives examined Thomas Din's car and noticed that the passenger window had been recently replaced, raising further suspicions. When they opened the BMW's door, they discovered small glass shards in the doorway, indicating the window had been broken. Additionally, the garage had a strong smell of fresh paint, suggesting recent repair work, possibly because the silver wheels had been repainted black. In addition, the police had a search warrant for Thomas Din and Jennifer's house. They were surprised to find the house so empty. Despite earning a good income, but he had very little furniture. Instead of a bed, there was just a large mattress on the floor. Jennifer was the primary breadwinner, making about $250,000 a year, while Thomas Din earned much less. He was a genius, spending all his time creating new projects, but he struggled with entrepreneurship. Thomas Din and Jennifer loved to travel and spend a lot of money on trips. On the kitchen table, detectives found several notes, many of which were love letters exchanged daily between Thomas Din and Jennifer. However, there was one note that caught their attention. It congratulated someone on being the best gunslinger of the Wild West. What did this mean? Detectives discovered that Thomas Din and Jennifer had a small arsenal of weapons at their home, but not the murder weapon, a Ninham Glock. He was held in custody for 4 months while awaiting trial. He was unable to post bail, which was set at an extraordinary $10 million, an amount even he considered excessive. Throughout this time, he remained calm and showed no signs of fear. He and his wife, Jennifer, frequently spoke on the phone, but their conversations were monitored by law enforcement. Their behavior was noted as quite strange and childish. They used many pet names and spoke in a way that was overly sweet, which some officers found difficult to tolerate. During these calls, the police were unable to obtain any significant information, and the evidence against Thomas Din was minimal and indirect. A key focus of the case was to establish a motive for the murder. The police thoroughly searched for any relevant information and looked into a connection between Thomas Din and Yancey. However, they did not find any contact information, phone calls, or acquaintances between the two. This shows that the two people do not know each other at all. Upon examining Thomas Din's computer, investigators discovered that he had a long-standing interest in committing the crime. He spent years researching on the internet how to commit an effective murder and how to avoid punishment. This passion led him to create a detailed database of bloody crimes in which every piece of information was carefully organized and analyzed. All of this data was stored on his hard drive. Furthermore, after the murder, Thomas Din joined the Yancey Memorial page on social media. Investigators found videos on his computer showing him driving his BMW sports car recklessly and at high speeds. In addition, he has received extensive training in firearm skills, becoming proficient with both hands. Among the video footage police collected was a tutorial on how to use a gun through a car window, exactly what happened in the Yancey case. Immediately after that, police conducted a search of Thomas Din's workplace and discovered a crucial clue. Disassembled parts of a 9mm pistol were found in paper towels in the trash can. However, some parts were missing, preventing the full assembly of the weapon and hindering a ballistic examination to determine if the gun was used in the murder. Despite this, the discovery heightened suspicions against Thomas Din. The prosecution concluded that he had a motive to kill for amusement, randomly shooting the first person he encountered on the road, then cleverly disappeared in his car. After the murder, Thomas Din returned home and reviewed materials on how to erase evidence from his car. He then replaced the glass and painted the rims of his vehicle. At this time, the police suspected that he had an accomplice, which was his wife, Jennifer. She displayed nervous behavior and avoided eye contact, leading police to believe she was concealing information. However, she did not ask for a lawyer and instead gave investigators her wallet, which contained several receipts. These documents helped the investigation progress significantly. They pinpointed the exact location where Thomas Dean had replaced the car glass. Jennifer reported that they were robbed of car glass, which prompted them to visit a car service. Investigators suspect that she may have known about what had happened. Although she did not know about Thomas Dean's plan initially, he kept her informed after the murder and asked for her assistance. The following day, he and Jennifer went directly to a car glass store in Portland. He told the seller that someone had attempted to steal his car and that the thief had smashed the window. They acted calmly in the store, a detail that investigators later uncovered. Police could not confirm Thomas Dean's account of the burglary, as he did not report the incident to police at the time. 3 weeks later, he and Jennifer visited a tire store in North Seattle. There he introduced himself as Peter, while Jennifer remained as quiet as before. They needed new tires, as old rubber tracks were among the evidence found at the crime scene. Although the murder weapon was never found, police did discover a brand new set of tires in Thomas Dean's shop. The authorities believed they had sufficient evidence to charge him with first-degree murder. On November 19, 2014, 2 years after Yancey was murdered, Thomas Dean appeared in court. He was no longer the confident man he had been when the police arrested him. Now he looked like a shy and humble college student, seemingly aiming to win the jury's trust. His transformation was intended to convince people that he was innocent, contrasting starkly with the violent image of a killer. However, the truth was different. Thomas Dean's mother was Vietnamese, and his father was an engineer at Boeing. They never missed a court hearing, always supporting and believing in their son's innocence. However, his wife, Jennifer, was absent from the trial. His parents said that he was very worried about his wife, so he asked her not to come to court to avoid judgmental looks. Despite this, she kept in touch with him every day, and they always had sweet conversations. She had complete faith in his innocence. The prosecutor argued that Thomas Dean's motive in the murder was to seek entertainment, as he wanted to experience the thrill of committing the crime and was trying to evade punishment. They presented extensive video footage from his computer as evidence, including numerous recordings of murders in which he collected important information. However, the defense argued that the police had collected all this evidence recklessly. They emphasized that, in addition to these documents, Thomas Dean's computer contained extensive information about his travels and technical developments. They stressed that there was no information that could be considered proof of his guilt, as there was no physical evidence, such as DNA or fingerprints. However, when Thomas Dean testified, he admitted to the crime. He described it as a fit of rage during a traffic accident. Although it was a risky decision, but in his view, this could be considered a mitigating factor in the murder case. He said that on that day, he stopped Yancey on the highway. Afterwards, he heard many curses and threats from Yancey. A Subaru followed his BMW to a traffic light, where they stopped. At that point, Yancey threw a wine bottle at him, hitting him in the head and injuring him, all while hurling insults. This frightened he so much that he pulled out his 9mm handgun and attacked Yancey in self-defense. Although there were many signs that he had overstepped his defense, he believed that this helped save his life. He believed that in a fit of rage, Yancey could have attacked him and caused a traffic accident. He also thought Yancey had a weapon in his car, which prompted his immediate response. However, many found his story hard to believe. Witnesses said that they did not hear any loud screams and did not see Yancey throw the bottle. The confrontation seemed to happen suddenly without any prior provocation. Furthermore, Thomas Dean did not have any injuries on his head. Yancey's friends and family attempted to prove that his testimony was false. They insisted that Yancey would not behave like that and was unlikely to become aggressive, especially since Yancey would not give up his favorite wine. Despite this, Thomas Din maintained that his actions were a self-defense response to Yancey's aggression. He hopes to be acquitted on grounds of self-defense. However, he said he fled the scene of the crime in a state of panic. He wasn't thinking clearly and quickly disposed of evidence out of fear, all while denying that the materials found on his computer were related to the crime. Strange behavior, though. He remained calm throughout the 3-day trial. The prosecution aimed to prove Thomas Din's guilt through circumstantial evidence. Witnesses testified to the incident surrounding the shooting, after which the jury deliberated on the verdict. On December 9, 2014, they unanimously found Thomas Din Bowman guilty of murder. He was so shocked by the verdict that he couldn't believe it, breaking down in tears in the courtroom as the verdict was read. Thomas Din's parents defended their son. They accepted responsibility and repeatedly apologized to the Yancey family. They begged to go to jail on behalf of their talented son, who they believed could make positive contributions to society. However, their request was denied. In contrast, Thomas Din himself showed no remorse. He expressed indignation that the jury did not believe his claim of self-defense. Ultimately, he was sentenced to 29 years in prison. Meanwhile, his wife, Jennifer, filed for divorce, changed her name, and relocated to another city. She refused to communicate with the media and was not charged with complicity for cooperating with the investigation. After the verdict, Thomas Din attempted to end his life, but was unsuccessful. He is currently incarcerated at the Bay Correctional Facility in Washington. His home is currently vacant, and 2 vehicles linked to the case are stored in a police warehouse. The case of Angel Sawyer. Milton Sawyer was born in 1963 in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, where he lived his entire life. He grew up as an average child, playing in the woods and building huts. But he had a strong passion for collecting valuable and rare items, a trait he inherited from his father. This love for collecting eventually led him to open an antique store as an adult. Known as a treasure hunter, he bought and resold jewelry and other items, help him have an affluent life. He has a knack for finding rare treasures. However, Milton's personal life was not so smooth. He married in 2000 and had 3 children, but his relationship with his wife did not last. They eventually divorced. After the divorce, he devoted all his love to his children. He often took them out everywhere, both at work and in his free time. He is known to everyone as a father who deeply loves his children. For many years he was single and had little interest in dating, until 2011, when he met Angel Kiesinger, a 28-year-old woman, while dropping his child off at school. They struck up a conversation, though at that time, Angel was married and had 4 children. Angel reassured Milton that she was in the process of divorcing her husband, although he was 10 years older than her, but they remained bonded by their shared experiences of raising multiple children and failed marriages. Milton had already settled his custody issues, with their children living alternately with him and their mother, while Angel was just beginning to arrange shared custody. After their first meeting, they started to develop a close relationship. By 2012, they were married. Angel quickly became interested in Milton's business, and when she first visited his antique shop, she noticed that the shelves were quite messy. She cleverly rearranged the items in the store. Milton loved it. He noticed that the shop looked better and sales increased after rearrangement. However, the family's main job was not just to arrange the shelves of the antique shop. This family has 7 children, and they need to find a way to get along with all of them. They had been doing well until August 2, 2018, when a mysterious attacker takes the life of Milton, the city's most famous antique collector. At 2 a.m., Angel knocked on her neighbor's door, visibly shaken. She told her neighbor that an intruder had broken into her home and killed her husband, Milton. She was still tied up and unable to call for help herself. The neighbor immediately contacted emergency services by dialing 911. She informed the dispatcher that Angel was crying and claimed that Milton had been murdered. There was blood on Angel's face, and she mentioned that the attacker had a gun. She also said that the intruder was trying to steal money and jewelry, but Angel managed to escape. While waiting for the police to arrive, the neighbor stayed with Angel. When law enforcement officers reached the scene, they found the front door locked, but noticed that the back door was open. They entered through the back and proceeded to the bedroom, where Angel said that the injured Milton. Inside, the room was in complete disarray. The contents of the cabinets were strewn across the floor, and a significant amount of gold and silver jewelry was scattered everywhere. The chaos made it difficult for the police officer who arrived on the scene to locate Milton right away. It took some time to find Milton, who was discovered in the bathroom. He was a large man, taking up most of the floor space, and showed no signs of life. Doctors declared him dead. However, after further investigation, the police could not determine what had caused his death. Milton's hands were bound with tape behind his back, and he was lying face down in a small pool of blood. Police quickly realized that there was very little blood present, so he could not have been seriously injured. Only minor wounds were found on his body, which were not life-threatening. To uncover the cause of Milton's death, a detailed examination of his body and the crime scene was necessary. Meanwhile, Angel was taken to a medical facility for care, with the police staying with her for protection, as it was feared that the attacker might return. Milton's family was informed of the incident at around 3 o'clock in the morning. They were shocked by the news and could not believe that Milton, who was always friendly, could have had enemies. At the crime scene, police discovered signs of a robbery. All the furniture drawers were pulled out, and items were scattered on the floor. Milton showed no head injuries, and there was no shell casing found. Posture of the body showed signs of a struggle, and in such a situation, an attacker would have left behind DNA. Forensic experts were on the lookout for any evidence, including fingerprints. After conducting an autopsy, forensic experts concluded that Milton likely died from asphyxiation. The position of the body, with his hands tied behind his back and pressure from a hard surface under his chest, made breathing difficult. If he had been unconscious, the position could have been fatal. During the investigation, police questioned neighbors, but were unable to gather any significant information. Locals had only heard a loud noise and then silence. Detectives found no physical evidence at the scene. They found that there was a key in the back door lock, which was odd because keys would normally be kept in a safe place. However, Angel stated she had left the key outside on the porch so her children could use it if she returned home late. It was possible that the criminal had found the key and used it. Detectives collected the key as evidence, as it might contain the killer's fingerprints. Angel sustained a minor injury to the right side of her forehead, which was not life-threatening. She explained that on the night of the incident, only she and Milton were at home, while their 2 children were staying with friends. Around midnight, she went to the kitchen for a snack. When she opened the bedroom door, she saw a man dressed in black standing in the hallway. He approached her and demanded to know where the valuable jewelry was, claiming he was aware of the large amount stored in the house. She believed this was a targeted attack, as her husband Milton was known as the city's leading gold jewelry dealer. After taking the valuables, the robber struck she on the head, leaving her stunned. She fell, confused and unsure of what to do. Then, he took advantage of her state, binding her hands and feet with tape. A few hours went by, but Milton still hadn't emerged from the bathroom. She couldn't see what was happening with him. After a while, she decided to loosen the tape to free herself and stand up. She immediately ran to a neighbor's house for help. She also shared with the detectives about a suspicious person. Around 7 p.m. that night, they met a young man who wanted to sell a TV. However, Milton, the experienced antique dealer, suspected that the TV was stolen and refused to buy it. The young man was displeased and left, possibly holding a grudge against Milton. Angel recognized the young man. His name was Dylan. He had come with his girlfriend, and Milton had previously conducted business with him multiple times. She suspected that Dylan and his girlfriend was involved in drug use. She provided a detailed description of them. However, as detectives searched for Dylan and his girlfriend, they noticed several unusual aspects of the case. They checked the recordings from surveillance cameras near the house and found no suspicious people visiting the family. Strangely, a significant amount of money and jewelry remained untouched, not even the obvious items. This behavior is unusual for a robbery. Typically, thieves take everything they can find, especially if they know the victims have valuable items. The selective theft suggested that either no strangers had entered the house, or the motive behind the crime was not merely financial gain. The suspects, Dylan and his girlfriend, were arrested and charged with trafficking in illegal substances. During questioning, detectives put pressure on them and turned to talking about the attack involving Milton. But they did not understand what was being discussed. It seemed they were genuinely surprised. They were then told directly that they were suspected of killing Milton, but they provided an alibi about selling TVs. They confirmed that they had met him in the evening. However, this did not connect them with the subsequent tragic incident. According to them, they sold the TV to someone else. He even immediately provided his mobile phone so that the police could verify his words. After checking the geolocation of the cell phone, investigators confirmed that Dylan and his girlfriend were indeed in a different area at the time of the attack. At around midnight, they were too far from the crime scene, and this confirmed their alibi. Thanks to this, all suspicions against them were removed. The detectives returned to the very beginning of the investigation. They were unable to guess who had attacked Milton. However, the next day, they received new information from the forensic expert. The expert carefully reviewed the case, consulted with colleagues, and came to the conclusion that his initial assumption on positional asphyxia was incorrect. Milton could not have suffocated under his own weight. It was clear he had been intentionally strangled. A fractured ribcage found during the investigation supported the forensic expert's theories. However, this evidence does not match Angel's testimony, raising many questions and doubts. The police thoroughly investigated Angel and Milton's marriage, discovered that it was not as perfect as it appeared. Conversations with Angel's friends and family did not support these suspicions. They described the couple as having a long and seemingly happy marriage. No one believed that Angel could have had a motive for the attack. However, some of Milton's relatives described Angel as a very selfish woman. She was attractive and charismatic, but she always viewed herself as superior to others. This attitude attracted Milton because he really likes her confidence. He was willing to give her expensive jewelry from his antique shop, buy her cars, and always cater to her every whim. Milton's brother, David, informed detectives that after 5 years of marriage, their demands began to escalate. Angel increasingly shows no appreciation for the gifts and luxuries Milton gives her. Milton feels confused and has talked to David many times about the possibility that his wife, Angel, is unfaithful. In late 2017, suspicions arose when Angel was involved in an accident. Although she sustained only minor injuries, she was diagnosed with pain in her shoulders and hips. She went to a local physical therapy clinic where a 38-year-old doctor, Isaac Melcher, prescribed her daily exercises. Initially, she attended her appointments in regular clothes, but after a few sessions, her behavior changed dramatically. She started to take great care in her appearance, showering thoroughly before each visit, wearing expensive perfume, dressing in her best outfits, and put on makeup. This change makes her husband, Milton, suspect that she is preparing for a date with Isaac. He attempted to confront Angel about her unusual behavior, but she consistently denied any wrongdoing, insisting that she always dressed nicely because she wanted to look her best in all situations. Milton's suspicions continued to intensify. He became more sensitive to family issues, partly because he was religious. He is a good and trustworthy man, always honest with his wife. Therapy doctor Isaac seems to be the same. Isaac attended church regularly and was a wonderful husband and father of 3. Those who knew him acknowledged this. When police approached Isaac to talk about new details in the case, he revealed that Milton had been visiting the hospital frequently and had had many arguments with him involving Angel. Milton was an extremely jealous husband who often raised his voice during phone calls. Although Isaac denied having an affair with Angel, but the police still asked him to provide his cell phone for their investigation. However, he told them an unbelievable story. His phone fell into the water right before the robber broke into Milton's house, so he was forced to throw it away. After the murder, Isaac went to Walmart and bought a new cell phone. This action made detectives suspicious, as they did not think it was a coincidence. Isaac is believed to have had an affair with Angel and then purchased a new phone shortly after Milton's death. Detectives suspect that the missing phone may contain vital evidence linking Isaac to the murder. Furthermore, the loss of the phone would make it difficult to determine his whereabouts at the time of the incident. Isaac likely didn't realize that the police could have verified their assumptions by checking Angel's mobile phone. When she was taken in for questioning, she stated that her husband Milton was very jealous. She always dresses gorgeously and used jewelry to highlight her beauty, which attracted the attention of many men. However, she insisted that Milton overreacted and insisted that she did nothing excessive. She also denied any involvement in the crime. After questioning, the officers had no grounds to keep her in custody, so she was released. Investigators checked Isaac's alibi, which stated that he was at Walmart at the time of the murder to purchase a new cell phone. However, they obtained CCTV footage of the store and learned that he was not featured in it. Additionally, there was no receipt to confirm his purchase. At this point, investigators believed they had enough reason to search Isaac's house. They obtained a search warrant on August 8 and found his wife at home. She informed them that he had moved out of state and that she did not know of his relationship with Angel. Moreover, she could not confirm where he was on the night of the murder. She knew he was not home, but could not specify if he had gone to the store. Isaac's wife mentioned that he had traveled to visit his mother, which raised further concerns. This led to speculation that he might have sensed trouble and fled. Although he was not present, the police began searching his home, but found no useful information or evidence. They then reached out to Angel to find out where Isaac might be. She informed investigators that Isaac had reached out to her through social media. She said he was just asking about her, which prompted them to ask for her cell phone to check. She appeared reluctant to comply, which raised further concerns. If she was willing to discuss her communication with Isaac, why was she hesitant to share the details? Detectives checked her phone and immediately found a conversation between her and him. However, the name used there was Dustin, which detectives recognized as Isaac's middle name. In the messages, he referred to Angel as his beloved, indicating a romantic relationship between them. The police returned the phone to Angel, and at that exact moment, she received a new message. She refused to disclose its contents, right in front of the officers, deleted it. Any suspicion of her involvement in the crime has now become clearer. The focus turned to understanding and proving her role in the attack. To investigate further, detectives seized her phone. 10 days into the investigation, police received crucial evidence from a man named Lewis, who called the department and identified himself as Isaac's mentor. Lewis explained that from the first time Angel came to see Isaac, she showed interest in he and it seemed like she was flirting with he. Lewis said Isaac rejected her flirting words for a long time because it was against the rules. However, one day he entered the treatment room to find her completely naked, and he could not resist her. Then, they began a romantic relationship in the months leading up to Milton's murder. She told he that her husband, Milton, would never allow them to be together, portraying Milton as jealous and controlling. Isaac felt compelled to save her. Together, they devised a plan to eliminate her abusive husband, Milton. They agreed to stage a home invasion, with Isaac using a key that Angel had placed by the door. During the attack, they intended to be in the bedroom. Late at night, around midnight, Isaac broke into the house carrying a gun. He entered the bedroom and attacked Milton, strangling until Milton stopped resisting. During this chaos, Angel tried to intervene, but accidentally hit her head on the nightstand, which was an unforeseen incident, but helped in making the attack appear real. Isaac then staged the crime scene to look like a robbery by throwing items on the floor and filling a pillowcase with jewelry before making his escape. He planned to remove any DNA evidence related to Milton from his body, and Angel had a similar plan. Before the police arrived, Isaac disposed of all evidence from the attack in garbage cans scattered around the city and disposed of his phone. This information came from a police informant named Lewis, which needed verification. The investigators convinced Lewis to record a phone call with Isaac to gather evidence of his confession. Over 3 phone calls, they confirmed that Isaac had an affair with Angel and was responsible for the attack. The police arrested 38-year-old Isaac Dustin Melcher at his home in North Carolina. He was taken to the station for questioning, but refused to cooperate. Consequently, the detectives turned their attention to 45-year-old Angel. They informed her that they had arrested Milton's killer and asked her to come to the station to identify him. Upon her arrival, she was also detained and taken in for questioning. Angel finally admitted that she knew about Isaac's plan. He wants to get rid of her husband, Milton, who is destroying their relationship. However, she said that she tried to stop him. He began to behave aggressively, making she worry about the safety of herself and her children. Therefore, she decided not to intervene in the murder. The police discovered that it was all a lie and that the two had planned the crime together. In fact, she was the manipulator, inciting the attack. She sees herself as a victim, while Milton is seen as a cruel tyrant. Therefore, she tries to arouse pity and noble feelings in Isaac. In the end, he accepts the role of a knight, rescuing her from captivity. Isaac is intelligent and rational, but love blinds him. However, the prosecutor's office was in trouble because much of the evidence against Angel was circumstantial. During questioning, she labeled Isaac a crazed stalker and that she wanted nothing to do with him. Detectives informed Isaac of her true nature, prompting him to realize he was being used. Furious, he decided to testify against Angel in exchange for a plea deal. Isaac pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 25 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 20 years. However, the most important condition of the deal was that he promised to testify against Angel. During Angel's trial in September 2021, the prosecutor's office argued that she was not motivated by financial motives because she and Milton did not have a life insurance policy. Additionally, the house they lived in was Milton's property and had been purchased before they were married, meaning it would not be divided or given to her in the event of his death. During her conversations with investigators, Angel revealed that she felt trapped in a loveless marriage. The prosecutor claimed that Angel did not want to be known as a twice-divorced woman and believed that killing Milton would be the better option. On September 16, 2021, Isaac testified against Angel. He claims that she first made him fall in love with her. Then she took advantage of his sympathy and made him hate Milton by telling him about the abuse she suffered. Under her manipulation, he is willing to do anything to save her from suffering, but in reality, he is just a pawn in her hands. Although Angel did not testify during the trial, but she maintained her innocence throughout. However, Isaac's testimony ultimately sealed her fate. All 12 jurors found Angel Sawyer guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, resulting in a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Milton's antique shop never found a new owner and eventually closed. Currently, both Angel and Isaac remain in prison. The case of Brittany Tavar. Compassion is a valuable quality that not everyone has. It's understandable why some people hesitate to help strangers. Our story today illustrates the potential consequences of compassion mixed with misplaced trust. 45-year-old Brittany Tavar lives far away from her family and doesn't keep in touch. She rarely shares her experiences or seeks advice from loved ones, nor does she receive much support from them. Many people say she is a helper. Unfortunately, this trait led her to a tragic situation. After finishing school, Brittany dreamed of becoming an actress, so she headed to Hollywood, hoping to pursue her dream of a film career. However, she was unable to achieve her dream of becoming an actress. Brittany then returned to St. Augustine. She decided to become a real estate staff while also working part-time as a photographer. Brittany spent a lot of time exploring the city, looking for real estate for her clients, and taking architectural photos. This new path proved to be much more successful than her acting aspirations. She gained clients and later collaborated with many clients. Over the years, Brittany established herself as a popular real estate staff. She earned enough money to buy a nice house and lived a quiet, peaceful, but somewhat lonely life. The beach club became her second home, where she enjoyed singing by the beach and hanging out with a group of friends. On July 6, 2010, she followed her usual routine and then met up with friends in the evening. Brittany was friendly and seemed to be having a good time. However, she did not intend to stay long and left the party around 9:00 p.m. On her way home, she stopped at a nearby gas station to get gas. For the next 2 days, Brittany's family and friends were unable to reach her. They called and texted, but she did not respond. Her friends were very worried. Brittany was known for being punctual and responsible, so her sudden disappearance was unusual. Although she could have gone somewhere for work, she always informed her friends of her plans. Worried about her safety, several friends, including her best friend Brenda, went to her house to check on her. At this time, her family too were worried about her not responding to their calls and texts. When her friends arrived at Brittany's house, they immediately noticed that her car was not in the driveway. From the outside, Brittany's house looked completely normal. There were no signs of forced entry or anything that would indicate a search. Her friends started knocking on the door, but no one answered when they knocked. Brittany, who lived with 2 dogs and 2 cats, surprisingly, the dogs were gone with her, while the cats were still in the house. It was unthinkable that Brittany would leave her pets alone for so long without arranging for someone to care for them. Brittany's friends then contacted her sister to share their concerns. They decided to go into the house to feed the cats and investigate further. For convenience, they called a locksmith to help them unlock the door. Once inside, the first thing they noticed was the unusual level of cleanliness. Normally, Brittany's house would have some clutter due to her living with animals, but now it was spotless and sparkling. The air was filled with a strong smell of cleaning products. The cats were very hungry. Brittany's house was unusually cold, and the air conditioning was running at full blast, much to her friends' surprise. She was known to be frugal and would not leave the air conditioning on when she was away. Ultimately, Brittany's friends could not make sense of the strange details they noticed, so they went to the nearest police station to report her missing. The police were initially unconcerned, citing the usual excuses. They stated that as an adult, she had the right to manage her own time and was not required to inform anyone of her whereabouts. Brittany's family, which includes 3 brothers and a sister, hired a private investigator to investigate, and the family also contacted the police. Several police officers went to Brittany's home to assist in the investigation. The police conducted a thorough search, but they found no useful information. When the police looked into her personal life, they learned that Brittany did not appear to have any enemies and had no connections to the criminal world. She was known to be kind, decent, and generally stayed out of trouble. However, Brittany often discussed her problems with a woman named Anne. Initially, Their relationship was warm and friendly, but eventually turned hostile. According to her family, Brittany welcomed Anne into her home, which demonstrated her generous nature, as she often helped others in need. Witnesses noted that the two women often argued and even fought, leading to significant conflict between them. Brittany went to court to obtain a restraining order against Anne because she felt threatened by Anne's behavior. She believed her life was in danger and wanted to settle the dispute legally. She gathered all the necessary documents and evidence to support her case. Interestingly, she disappeared the day before the hearing was set to begin. This was particularly puzzling to those who knew her, as it seemed unlikely that she would vanish right before such an important event. Brittany had been determined to address this issue and had prepared extensively, so it was hard to believe she would willingly miss her own court hearing. After learning about Brittany and Anne, the police suspected that Anne might have been involved in the incident and wanted to question her to find out what had happened between her and Brittany. The police quickly called Anne in for questioning. Anne explained that she had housing problems and that she and Brittany had been friends who supported each other at work. However, things changed when Anne's boyfriend planned to visit from Ireland. He had come to the United States with the intention of finding a job and living with Anne. The search for housing began at this point. Anne reached out to Brittany, hoping she could provide a room for a while for herself and her partner, even though they were essentially strangers to Brittany. Initially, Brittany agreed to help her friend, but after some time living together, she changed her mind. Brittany confided in her friends that the couple was very difficult to live with, which created significant tension between the two women. Their friendship started to deteriorate quickly. The situation escalated into a fight, leading to Brittany's arrest after Anne called the police. Brittany claimed that the fight occurred because the couple refused to leave her home, and that Anne and her boyfriend attacked her, forcing her to defend herself. Brittany spent the night at the police station and received a suspended sentence, along with requirements to attend anger management classes and complete community service. Additionally, she was ordered to stay away from Anne and her boyfriend. Surprisingly, Anne chose to remain nearby, and she and her boyfriend joined the beach club's serenade, where they intentionally showed off in front of Brittany. What once were friends became enemies. Brittany accused Anne of acting provocatively and aggressively, claiming that Anne was intentionally trying to provoke her, which led Brittany to seek legal protection. To support her claims of threats from Anne, Brittany started carrying a small video camera to capture evidence. The hearing was scheduled for the day after Brittany was last seen at a party. Witnesses confirmed that after leaving the party, she intended to go to a gas station and then return home. Brittany did not plan to go anywhere else. She hadn't consumed alcohol and left early to prepare for her court appearance. The hearing aimed to establish a permanent restraining order against Anne, who had been stalking Brittany. Given the circumstances, Anne had a motive to harm Brittany to avoid facing consequences in court. When questioned by police, Anne remained calm and cooperative, but insisted that she had nothing to do with Brittany's disappearance. She also provided a solid, verifiable alibi. Police were not quick to eliminate Anne as a suspect because they had no other leads. Then a major breakthrough came in Hopkins, South Carolina. 2 dogs belonging to Brittany were found wandering around different neighborhoods across the city. The dogs had tags on them, and when scanned at a veterinary clinic, it was discovered that they were from Florida and belonged to Brittany. After examining her dogs, no other important clues to the investigation were found. Both dogs were taken to a shelter. The search for Brittany continues. By this time, the police had learned that for over 10 years, Brittany had provided temporary shelter to at least 8 people struggling with housing and other life challenges. Brittany did not charge them rent. Instead, her guests helped with housework, cleaning, cooking, and gardening. Unfortunately, her generosity may have attracted dangerous people. The last person she took in was Joseph Dean Roberts, 26, whom Brittany had met just weeks before she went missing. They met at a local bookstore, where she realized he needed help. Joseph quickly shared his heartbreaking story during a brief conversation with Brittany. He explained that he had become homeless after losing his job at a nearby gas station. Brittany, known for her kindness, offered him a temporary place to stay in her home so he could get back on his feet. In exchange, she simply asked for his help with household chores. Several friends of Brittany's met Joseph, and she introduced him at the beach club Serenade. Everyone described him as a modest and pleasant young man who seemed friendly and calm. Joseph shared that he had endured harsh treatment from his parents since childhood and openly recounted his difficult life. His situation was complex, leading him to live on the streets, but he was determined to persevere. He saw Brittany as a true savior. She even bought him a computer to help him develop his web design skills and offered her assistance with her work. However, as the police began to investigate him, he appeared increasingly suspicious. A few days after Brittany went missing, he was stopped for speeding while driving her vehicle in Evanston, Wyoming. After speaking with the police, they found no evidence to charge Joseph, so he was released. As police examined the final days of Brittany's life, Joseph's behavior raised more suspicions. Consequently, he became the primary suspect in her disappearance. His actions and his relationship with Brittany were concerning, which drew the police's attention for multiple reasons. Joseph was the last known person to see Brittany alive on the evening of July 6th, after returning from a party. It is believed that Brittany returned home after a visit to a gas station. Alarmingly, Joseph used Brittany's car right after she went missing. The police began investigating his activities for more information. On the same day, he was spotted in Olmar, where he bought several items, including a tent, a black t-shirt, and shorts. This raised suspicion because Joseph had no money, no job, and no permanent residence, making it odd that he could afford new clothes immediately after Brittany's disappearance. Police discovered that the payment method used for certain purchases was Brittany's bank card. This indicated that he had stolen from her. They decided to investigate the transactions made with this card more closely. It became apparent that after Brittany went missing, he frequently used her card across multiple states. At this point, Joseph had fled, prompting police to issue a public alert through the media, warning that Joseph could be armed and dangerous. At this point, everyone was hopeful that Brittany would be found alive. The search for Joseph took longer than expected, creating urgency for Brittany's safety. As time passed, the likelihood of her being alive decreased. During this period, her family and friends pressured police to act quickly, fearing that any delay might jeopardize her life. Later, Joseph was arrested for petty theft in Seattle. Police, who were focused on searching for Brittany, were notified of Joseph's arrest and quickly traveled to the city to question him as a potential kidnapper. People still hoped that Brittany was still alive and in custody. They speculated that Joseph's purchase of a tent might indicate that he had hidden her from the city. During questioning, Joseph revealed a shocking truth. He said that on July 6, 2010, shortly after Brittany returned from a party, they got into an argument. Brittany insulted Joseph, accusing him of being unhygienic and smelly, and he claimed she was being very rude. This angered Joseph, causing him to lose control. In a fit of rage, he grabbed a hammer and hit Brittany in the head multiple times. Joseph said Brittany did not die from her injuries. Instead, she fell to the floor, bleeding and still breathing. Joseph then walked into the kitchen, grabbed a large knife, and returned to kill Brittany. After committing the crime, he quickly began cleaning up the crime scene. He disposed of all the evidence by throwing it in the trash. To clean up the blood, he used cleaning supplies found in the house. Initially, he thought about hiding Brittany's body in the attic of the house, but he was unable to carry her up the stairs. He then wrapped the body in bed sheets. Before dawn, he placed her body in the trunk of Brittany's car to avoid attracting the attention of the neighbors. He then planned to drive far away from the crime scene. When asked by the police why Joseph took the dogs out of the house and chased them away, but left the cats alone, he mentioned that the dogs might attract attention. So Joseph decided to take the dogs with him when he hid the body. He left the cats behind because they were well behaved and could roam the streets freely, so he was not worried about them. He believed that the cats would find food and would not attract attention. After cleaning up, Joseph put the 2 dogs in the car and drove to Lysistrata, near Highway 95. Once there, he took Brittany's body into the woods, intending to bury her. However, Joseph did not have the proper tools and could not dig a grave by hand, so he decided to leave Brittany's body in the ground, believing that it would soon be eaten by a wild animal. On the way back, Joseph released the 2 dogs onto the road. He then returned to Brittany's house and went to bed. In the morning, he realized that Brittany's family and friends would soon start looking for her. He decided to escape in her car. He took all the money and valuables in the house, along with her card. He had known the password to the card for a long time because he had used it many times to buy groceries. He traveled across several states to avoid the police. Then, when he ran out of money and tried to steal from someone else, he was discovered and arrested. Police focused their search on Brittany's body. Joseph pinpointed the location of the body on a map, just a few hundred yards from Highway 95. Her body was later found, but it was badly decomposed, making identification impossible. The only way to confirm her identity was through dental records, which later confirmed the body was Brittany's. The medical examiner noted severe head trauma caused by a blunt object and a knife wound causing injury to the neck. When Brittany's family learned what had happened, they were stunned. Joseph, who Brittany had helped, had murdered her. Friends and family had warned her that it could be dangerous, but Brittany was confident that she could avoid dangerous people. Tragically, her instincts had led to disastrous consequences. Not long before Brittany disappeared, she confided in her friends that Joseph was starting to annoy her. When she returned home, she found him going through her belongings, and she noticed that small amounts of money were missing. They often argued, and Brittany considered kicking him out, but she never got the chance. Meanwhile, the police were investigating Joseph's troubled past. They discovered that he had been dishonest with Brittany. He was actually homeless. He had been living in a tent at Brody Beach, Florida. He was skilled at presenting himself as a victim and manipulating others. She had invited him to live in her house, as he appeared to be a nice and honest young man who openly discussed his mental health issues. However, shortly after moving in, his behavior changed drastically. He began to neglect his personal hygiene and started using illegal drugs in his room. When Brittany found out, she asked him to leave. However, instead of leaving, he decides to confront Brittany, ultimately leading to her death. After Joseph confessed, he was quickly arrested for first-degree murder with aggravating circumstances. Although he claimed to be insane, a mental health evaluation determined that he was competent to stand trial. This led to a new legal battle, with both the defense and the prosecution making strong arguments. Joseph's mental health was a contentious issue, raising the possibility that he could evade punishment and instead be sent to a treatment clinic. As a result, the lawyer and the prosecutor came to an agreement. Joseph accepted the plea deal, agreeing to plead guilty to the lesser charge of second-degree murder. As a result, Joseph Dean Roberts was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Brittany's family felt the sentence was too lenient for the severity of the crime, but their efforts to appeal the verdict were unsuccessful. The case of Marlene Oakes. Marlene was born in December 1954 to her parents Lorraine and Billy. At the age of 16, she married a much older man, Bill Major, who was 26 at the time. Despite the large age difference, they quickly got along. The same year they got married, they welcomed their first son, Donald. 4 years later, they had a daughter named Lalana. The family lived in Verona, a small town in the suburbs of Kentucky, USA. Verona is located near downtown Cincinnati. Bill worked as an auto mechanic, and according to Marlene's father, he was ambitious and had a great ability to persuade others. This gave him a big advantage in his job. His auto repair shop was located near the interstate. A convenient location helps him always have many customers. At that time, Marlene was a housewife, taking care of the children, while Bill was the main breadwinner for the family. However, their marriage was not a happy one. They argued frequently, and Bill often abused his wife. One day, a man named Glenn St. Hilaire arrived in town and quickly befriended Bill. He began working at Bill's shop, handling a variety of tasks. Originally from Canada, Glenn owned welding equipment and had extensive knowledge of cars, thus becoming a valuable assistant to Bill. He lives in a trailer near Bill's house, and eventually, he and Marlene developed feelings for each other. After that, they had an affair with each other. Bill was always at work, which gave Glenn and Marlene the freedom to meet. Marlene felt drawn to Glenn, who was younger, calmer, and made her feel at ease. By October 1980, Marlene was 25 years old, while Bill was 35. He frequently resorted to violence against her, keeping the entire family in a state of fear. In this stressful situation, it is not surprising that she sought comfort from Glenn. At the time, Donald was 8 years old and Lalana was 4. Strangely, Bill not only tolerated her relationship with Glenn, but even encouraged it. Those close to the family were aware of the situation and found it shocking. However, events soon took a tragic turn. On the afternoon of October 11, 1980, Bill and Marlene had a big argument in their backyard, and the neighbors could hear it clearly. Later that evening, Bill took his children, Donald and Lalana, to a neighbor's house, asking them to care for the kids for a day due to serious family issues. He told the neighbors that Marlene had run off with Glenn and that he needed time to process everything. The neighbors, however, knew that he was enraged over Marlene's relationship with Glenn. He beat her and the children because of it, and her car was missing. However, no matter Bill's explanation, no one could believe that Marlene, a mother who is wholeheartedly devoted to her children, can leave her children. Afterward, Bill contacted the police and repeated the same story he had shared with the neighbors. However, the details didn't quite add up. Marlene's friends insisted that she deeply loved her children and would never abandon them. They also revealed that she was angry at he because of his abusive behavior. She confided in them that Bill had threatened to kill her if she left him to live with Glenn. A close friend of his even heard him describe in detail how he would kill her if she defied him. He had talked about dismembering her body and hiding the remains so thoroughly that they would never be found. Glenn, Marlene's lover, once heard Bill confess that he would attack her, decapitate her, and destroy her teeth so that the police could not identify her through dental records. Marlene began to fear that her plan to move in with Glenn could put her life in serious danger. In her diary, she wrote that Bill would only agree to sign divorce papers if she promised not to report his abuse of her and the children to the authorities. She was in a difficult position, not knowing what to do. She was exhausted by the toxic relationship and wanted to escape her controlling husband, but she was terrified of the fallout. Despite this, the police launched an investigation into her disappearance. She was officially declared a missing person. She was described as a petite woman with blonde hair and glasses. At the time she went missing, she had been wearing jeans and a blue-green checkered shirt. Her car was also reported missing. On October 11, 1980, Marlene called her sister to talk about the problems in her marriage. She was looking for advice, but her sister didn't know how to help. She said she planned to file for divorce and fight for full custody of her children. She also shared another reason for her decision. Bill had been harassing their 8-year-old son, Donald. She felt very scared and could not bear it. She warned Bill to never touch the children again and threatened to kill him if he did. This made him furious. Marlene confided to her sister that she had evidence of Bill's abuse of Donald and had hidden it in a safe place where he could not find it. She assured her that if anything happened to her, the evidence would be turned over to the police. Later that day, she called her sister again, but this time she sounded very distressed. She had just had another argument with Bill. Marlene then gave Glenn her diary, which contained all the important incident. She told him that if she ever went missing, detectives could find answers in the pages of her diary. She also told her sister the same thing during their phone call. That was the last time her family ever heard from her. On the night of October 11, Glenn arrived at Bill's house after midnight and found the area around the trailer in disarray. Around 3 a.m., he encountered Bill and asked about Marlene. Bill claimed that Marlene had run away. However, he found this hard to believe. He had recently seen she, and she had no intention of leaving her kids behind. He knew she was a mother who was always devoted to her children, so she would never abandon them. It soon became clear to everyone that Bill was lying. During this time, the children had actually been staying with neighbors. He was the one who brought them there and told them that Marlene had run away with a lover. His story was riddled with contradictions, and he kept changing his account. Then, when Bill arrived at his neighbor's house, he even handed over all of his weapons to them to take care of the children, including a 9mm handgun and a .22 caliber rifle. He also sold his tractor to another neighbor, explaining that he was moving to live closer to his parents. A few days after Marlene's disappearance, Bill went to the police station to report the incident. He said that after an argument at home, she had left, and he was convinced that she had run away with her lover. Following this, Glenn also contacted the police and provided information about the conflicts in the relationship between Marlene and Bill. He handed over to the police everything related to Marlene, including the diaries she had left with him. These diaries contained clues that were detrimental to Bill. Glenn also recounted Bill's unusual behavior after Marlene's disappearance. According to him, Bill's transfer of weapons to neighbors and the sale of valuable assets were very suspicious. This showed that Bill seemed to be planning to run away. He believed that Bill was involved in Marlene's disappearance. After speaking with Glenn, the police began investigating Marlene's case more thoroughly. They believed that she did not simply run away from her husband, Bill, but that the matter may be more serious. It is very likely that one of the two men, Bill or Glenn, was involved in this disappearance. Bill and Glenn were both considered prime suspects in the case. However, both denied any involvement. Glenn was cooperative and willingly shared all the information he had with the police. Bill, on the other hand, gave conflicting testimony and behaved strangely during a polygraph test, makes him more suspicious. At this time, the police reviewed Marlene's diary, which details the motive for the crime and even hints at what Bill may have done to her. However, there was still not enough evidence to charge Bill with murder. No evidence or trace of the incident was found in the trailer, the area surrounding the vehicle, or at the auto repair shop. The police spoke to Marlene's children, Donald and Lalana. They paid particular attention to 8-year-old Donald, hoping he might be able to provide some information, especially considering the contents of Marlene's diary. However, the boy was too frightened, making it extremely difficult to gather any information from him. Lalana was not questioned at all because she was too young. Although Donald did not reveal anything useful, but Bill violently beat him after learning about the police interviews. Around the same time, he also began abusing his 4-year-old daughter, Lalana, treating her cruelly. He often took the children to his workplace, where he continued to abuse them. The police also questioned Marlene's sister, who firmly rejected the idea that Marlene would abandon her family and children to be with her lover. According to her sister, she had planned to divorce Bill amicably, gain custody of the children, and then start a new life with Glenn. She has no intention of running away to avoid her problems. At that time, it was known that Marlene had disappeared with the car without taking any personal belongings. But even assuming that she had run away, why would she leave all her important belongings at home, including her wallet, driver's license, money, and jewelry? Furthermore, she did not bring the medications that her doctor had just prescribed. This medication was essential for her, making it unlikely she would leave without it. All of these details did not fit the theory that she had left on her own. Despite extensive investigation, no clues were found. Investigators continued questioning everyone who knew the family. During a conversation with the police, Bill admitted he no longer believed Marlene was alive, which raised suspicions. He also began agreeing with her sister and Glenn that it was unlikely she would have abandoned all her belongings and disappeared without leaving any message. After Marlene disappears, Bill begins to tell Donald and Lalana the whole truth about her relationship, detailing her encounters with her lover, Glenn. He seemed intent on turning the children against their mother. He accused her of drug use, abusing alcohol, and even selling her body. He claimed she had left because she didn't love them anymore. Donald and Lalana grew up thinking that their mother, Marlene, was a troubled person and had abandoned them. This left a deep wound in their souls. They could not understand why she abandoned them. They had no choice but to stay with their father, Bill, who raised them harshly. Lalana later recalled that after her mother's disappearance, Bill became a tyrant. He frequently subjected she and Donald to physical and emotional abuse. On one occasion, he hit Donald so severely that the boy couldn't walk for several days. While the police were still investigating, Bill decided to sell all of his assets, including his home and auto repair shop. He then moved with his children to East Providence, Rhode Island, to be closer to his parents. There, he bought a trailer and stabilized life. The decision to move into a trailer was unusual. Bill gave up a comfortable lifestyle and a successful store in exchange for much more difficult living circumstances. His new home was considered unfavorable and not the best place to raise young children. A year after Marlene's disappearance, he remarried. His new wife was named Pauline. For a long time, they lived together but could not officially marry, because Bill could not legally end his marriage with Marlene. Eventually, he managed to file for divorce and married Pauline. Meanwhile, Glenn stayed in Verona. He found work at a local factory and was one of the few people, along with Marlene's family, who continued to search for answers about her disappearance. He frequently visited the police station to check on the investigation. The police were not only searching for Marlene but also for her car, yet no leads were found. They sent her dental records and other information to nearby cities and states, hoping for a breakthrough. Although the search is still ongoing, there is no sign that Marlene is dead. Police speculate that she have wanted to leave her current life behind to start anew somewhere else. On November 29, 1981, a hunter discovered a partial skull in the woods, a few miles from the old trailer park where Bill's family had lived. The bone was heavily damaged and showed marks from the object that had severed it from the body. For many years, the police were unable to identify the victim. All they could determine was that the bone belonged to a white woman, under 30 years old. There were signs of dismemberment, and the cause of death was determined to be multiple gunshot. As the years passed, Bill continued to live with Pauline, but his treatment of Donald and Lalana became increasingly cruel. At one point, Lalana became so desperate that she confided in her stepmother Pauline, telling her about the abuse. She revealed that Bill had molested Donald and then raped her, threatening to kill them if they spoke out. Pauline was furious when she learned the truth and could not keep quiet. She confronted Bill, warning him that if he did it again, she would call the police. For a while, Bill promised to control himself. By 1985, Bill and Pauline had a child together, By this time, Marlene had been missing for 13 years. Lalana once again confides in Pauline about Bill's harassment. This time, Pauline reported the incident to the police. Bill was arrested, and his children, Donald and Lalana, admitted that they had prayed that he would not return home. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison for his crimes. After his release, he lost interest in his family. Pauline ended their relationship immediately after his arrest, but she refused to take care of his children, Donald and Lalana. Eventually, they went to live with their maternal grandmother, that is, Marlene's mother. At this point, Lalana asked her grandmother why her mother abandoned her and Donald. The grandmother replied that Marlene abandoned the children only because Bill killed Marlene. She firmly believed he was involved in Marlene's disappearance, though there was no concrete evidence to prove it. After his release from prison, Bill began a relationship with a woman named KLR. He concealed his dark past from her, claiming he had been imprisoned for armed robbery. He did not want her to know about the abuse he had inflicted on his children. The two married and lived happily for a while. However, in 1995, Bill suffered a stroke and became confined to a wheelchair. By then, Lalana was an adult and capable of handling matters on her own. She decided to look into the disappearance of her mother, Marlene. The first step she took was buying a notebook to document all the clues. She then approached Bill and pleaded with him to disclose the location of her mother's remains so that she could provide her with a proper burial. Lalana even promised him that if he told her the truth, she won't report to the police. However, Bill outright refused and told her that if she thought he would reveal where he hid her mother's body, she was crazy. Despite her attempts to persuade him, he remained uncooperative. Understanding that Bill would not help, Lalana launched her own investigation. She began speaking with relatives, close friends, and acquaintances who might have information about her mother, Marlene. During her search, she learned that her mother had kept a diary where she documented significant events in her life. She also discovered that the police had confiscated the diary as evidence back in 1980. She managed to obtain permission to review her mother's case file, including the diary entries. What she read left her deeply shocked. Marlene's diary revealed that she was aware of Bill's abuse of their son, Donald. She also discovered that Bill had been convicted in 1975 for molesting 2 young boys. After learning this, she wrote that all her feelings for her husband, Bill, had vanished. She demanded that he never touch their child again. The diary detailed Bill's erratic behavior and threats, including his frequent boasts about knowing how to commit the perfect crime. He claimed that to avoid identification, one would need to remove all the victim's teeth. Marlene also expressed her plans to file for divorce and seek full custody of her children. In one of her final diary entries, Marlene wrote that she had threatened Bill with divorce, cut off contact between him and his children. He did not want that to happen, but not out of love for them. In 2000, Lalana contacted the police and shared the information from Marlene's diaries. This prompted the police to re-examine the diaries and immediately question Bill and Donald. Donald provided detailed accounts of Bill's cruelty. Lalana also learned that, sometime after Marlene's disappearance, a skull had been discovered in a forested area near their old house. She located the exact spot and visited it herself, hoping to uncover more evidence, but her search was unsuccessful. The police had an important piece of evidence, a skull that had no teeth, which matched what Bill had said about the perfect crime. At the time, identification of remains relied heavily on dental records, as modern identification technology was not available. When experts tried traditional DNA testing, they discovered severe bone damage, making analysis impossible. So they turned to newer technology, specifically mitochondrial DNA analysis. However, the county refused to pay the $120 cost of the study, As it was not certain that it would help the case, Lalana had to raise money to pay for the procedure. For this, she organized a small fund. At that time, such research was conducted only in one laboratory in the United States. The amount of money needed to be raised was huge, but her family were enthusiastic in supporting her. For example, her family members contributed their entire savings to cover the cost of the analysis. Finally, she earned enough money. County forensic experts took DNA samples from Donald and Lalana to compare with the DNA from the skull that was found. The results showed that the skull did indeed belong to Marlene, who had been missing. This confirmed the suspicions of her children and relatives that she had been murdered. Bill learned about the discovery of the skull. Bill's father called the police to report that his son had killed Marlene. According to his account, Bill had attacked her, then dismembered her body and scattered the body parts far apart. To prevent identification, Bill destroyed the upper and lower jaws. Bill also submerged her car in the river, and he also informed the authorities of its location. When they tried to recover the car, they encountered many difficulties due to the strong river currents, which may have pushed the car far from its original location. They tried draining the river and used experienced divers, but the search was complicated. Investigators decided to enlist Bill's father's help in gathering more evidence against Bill. They instructed him to call Bill, get a confession during the conversation, and record it. To unnerve Bill, they tell Bill about an investigation initiated by Lalana. Upon hearing that his daughter was looking for Marlene, Bill became enraged and told her to stop looking and forget about her mother. Bill believed the case had long been closed and that he was no longer at risk. Nevertheless, during the recorded phone call, he confessed to the crime. On July 25, 2001, Bill Major was arrested and charged with the murder of Marlene. During the interrogation, Bill admitted to the crime but attempted to place the blame on his wife, Marlene. He claimed they were in her car when she pulled out a gun and began threatening him. According to Bill, a struggle broke out, during which he accidentally attacked her several times. He claimed that there were 2 bullets in her head and 4 in her body. However, this testimony seems more like intentional than accidental in a fight. The trial started in 2003, when Bill was 59 years old. After suffering a stroke in 1995, he had lost the ability to walk and appeared in court in a wheelchair. During the trial, his children, Donald and Lalana, testified about the abuse and violence they endured during their childhood. They recounted what happened inside the family trailer. Bill's lawyer argued that his actions were linked to nervous tension, claiming that Marlene frequently threatened him, leading to emotional breakdowns. The defense also argued that the murder was an act of self-defense. After a lengthy argument from the defense attorney, Bill looked at his children and smiled, clearly satisfied with the attorney's presentation. He was confident he would remain a free man. However, Lalana smiled back at her father and expressed her hope that he would spend the rest of his life in prison for what he had done to them and to Marlene. After deliberating for over 40 minutes, the jury found Bill Major guilty of Marlene's murder. He was sentenced to life in prison. On December 7, 2016, Bill applied for parole, but his request was denied. He died in prison on October 15, 2020. Lalana was satisfied with the outcome of the investigation. She had spent much of her life pursuing justice. She believes that Bill murdered Marlene at that time because he suspected Marlene's of having an affair. She believes that Bill meticulously planned the murder out of fear of going to jail and wanting to maintain control over his children, which would allow him to continue to torment them. Notably, Bill's children, Donald and Lalana, refused to take their father's last name. Lalana later changed it to her husband's. She regrets that during her childhood, she was influenced by her domineering father, causing her to mistakenly believe that her mother had abandoned her The rest of Marlene's body and her car were never found. However, her family took solace in the fact that justice had been served. Only her mutilated skull was buried. The case of Natalia Melman. Natalia Melman was born in Argentina in 1986 to her parents, Gustav and Lava. In 1992, the family moved to Miramar, a coastal city southwest of Buenos Aires, in search of new opportunities. After relocating, the family encountered financial difficulties due to a failed business investment. Despite these challenges, Natalia maintained a positive attitude and found ways to contribute financially. She sold newspapers, lottery tickets, and other items to help her parents and save money for a bicycle. Natalia was very close to her family and was recognized as an outstanding student. Her mother noted that Natalia woke up every day at 4 in the morning to study. This dedication resulted in her achieving top scores in nearly all her subjects, and she was frequently elected as a class monitor. Natalia aspired to become an obstetrician-gynecologist and planned to study in Cuba, hoping to return to Argentina to assist women with limited resources. This was her primary dream. Besides her studies and family time, Natalia enjoyed having fun like any young girl. She loved spending time with friends and exploring various public places in Miramar, a tourist city with many attractions. In 2001, when Natalia was 15, a tragic event occurred. On the night of February 3, she went out for a walk with friends. They first visited a bar and then went to the nightclub Amadeus. Natalia intended to talk to her ex-boyfriend at the club, but it seems things did not go well, and she left the club at 1:00 a.m. This was the last time anyone saw her. Her parents believed she was at a friend's house and waited for her to come home. However, by the afternoon of February 4, they began to worry when she still hadn't returned. Around 6:00 p.m., their concern grew, and they went to the friend's house where Natalia was supposed to be. This friend said Natalia was not with her. Natalia's parents were worried when they couldn't find any information about her. They first contacted the hospital, hoping to learn if she had been in an accident or if something else was wrong. But this inquiry yielded no results. After not hearing from friends or the hospital, they decided to report her disappearance to the police. Unfortunately, the police were not very helpful. They asked questions about Natalia's clothing, her age, whether she had a boyfriend, and if she had a violent personality. Instead of registering her as missing, they categorized her as having run away from home. The parents strongly disagreed, believing that Natalia would not have left on her own, especially since she had been acting normally before she went missing. Witnesses saw Natalia at the club talking to her ex-boyfriend Maximiliano, who was with another girl named Diana. Frustrated, Natalia decided to leave the club. Another man present that night was Gustavo Fernandez, who was older than Natalia. Several witnesses reported that he followed Natalia as she said goodbye to her friends and left the party. Gustavo was known to the police due to his criminal record. He claimed that he had come to the party as a police informant. When he was taken to the police station to give a statement, he admitted that he had seen Natalia, but maintained that he had not approached her. He said that she was walking a few meters in front of him, and that although they were walking in the same direction, he had lost sight of her when a patrol officer questioned him. After Gustavo gave his testimony, he was released, which angered Natalia's family. They felt he had more information than he revealed, but the police lacked concrete evidence to hold him. The officers who interviewed him noticed some unusual details, including scratch marks on one of his cheeks. Nonetheless, the police decided to release Gustavo. Friends, family, and volunteers joined the search for Natalia. Several photos of her were printed and volunteers went to nearby cities to hand out flyers. Unfortunately, these efforts did not lead to any significant discoveries. Several police officers joined the search and a helicopter was deployed, but no clues were found. As the days passed, Natalia's parents began to lose hope. Many people reported seeing her in various locations, some claiming that she appeared to be under the influence of drugs, while others claimed to have seen her in other cities in Argentina with a young man, leading many to believe that she had run away. At that time, people were searching for her, all hoping to find her safe and well. The police assisted in these search efforts. On February 8, 2001, 4 days after she went missing, Natalia was discovered. A forester found her body under a pile of branches. The body was soon confirmed to be Natalia Melman. Natalia's parents learned about the discovery of Natalia's body through the media. Natalia's father was in another city in Buenos Aires at the time, where he was looking for dogs to help find Natalia's body. When he heard the news, he quickly returned to Miramar. Natalia's father was with her from the time the body was found until the autopsy. He wanted a thorough investigation, but Natalia's fingernails had been cut, which was unfortunate because the DNA of potential attackers can often be found under fingernails when victims try to defend themselves. The results of the forensic examination showed that there were numerous signs of trauma, along with traces of blood on her hands and thighs. She also suffered injuries that could have been caused by a blunt object. In addition, her body had burns and her clothes were partially torn. Toxicology tests were conducted, but no drugs were found, although a very high concentration of alcohol was detected in her blood. It is important to note that when Natalia left the party and said goodbye to her friends, she did not appear to be intoxicated. Those who accompanied her insisted that she had not been drinking, which raised many questions. The cause of death was determined to be strangulation with a rope tied around her neck. The attacker left a small knot, similar to a bow, on the left side of her neck. This suggests that the killer had plenty of time. The multiple injuries on her body suggest that she had been subjected to various forms of violence, making this one of the most horrific crimes in the country's history. Biological evidence was found, including at least 5 different DNA samples that needed to be analyzed. Additionally, it was determined that she had been dead for 4 to 5 days, suggesting that Natalia likely died on the day she went missing, or the day after. Police suspected Gustavo of being involved in the case. They began searching for him, but he appeared to be evading arrest. People who had seen him regularly had not seen him in recent days, suggesting that he had gotten wind of the situation and fled. While police continued to search, they obtained a search warrant for his home. There they discovered a jacket that had been washed several times, which further raised their suspicions. A luminol test found multiple bloodstains on the jacket, further confirming his guilt. They searched for him everywhere, but it was like he had vanished without a trace. The media extensively reported on the case, and Natalia's family received support from numerous people. Although there were many false leads, they also received a lot of helpful information. Just a week after the body was found, Gustavo were arrested. At first he did not want to talk, but eventually he provided evidence against 3 police officers. At the same time, the police were trying to find the location of the murder. Through tips that Natalia's family received after the case was reported in the media, they identified it as an abandoned house in the Copacabana area. The house was owned by a police officer, and there were allegations that some police officers had used it to bring young girls, drug them, and assault them. The police obtained a search warrant for the house and brought in police dogs. The dogs reacted strangely to the strong odor in the house. The police then focused on collecting evidence. They used luminol and discovered traces of blood on the washed walls, along with hair and soil samples. These samples were compared to those found on Natalia's clothing, which matched. This indicated that the soil in the house and the soil on Natalia's clothing were similar, leading the police to theorize that she likely died in that house. Gustavo then charged 3 policemen, including Oscar Alberto Echenique, Ricardo Alfredo Suarez, and Ricardo Anselmini. This brought the total number of suspects to 4, but only 1 was arrested. The only person in pretrial detention was Gustavo. The 3 remaining police officers are free pending trial, and all 4 have pleaded not guilty. Police searched their homes and cars, discovering key evidence in one of the cars. They found traces of DNA from blood that matched Natalia's, along with hair that also belonged to her. DNA samples from the car matched those from the 3 police officers. One of the DNA samples found on Natalia's body matched that of police officers Suarez, Anselmini, and Oscar Alberto. However, 2 more DNA samples were still needed to be identified, bringing the total to at least 5 different DNA samples discovered. Despite this overwhelming evidence, the only person arrested was Gustavo. A year later, in 2002, a verdict was reached. Oscar Alberto Echenique, Ricardo Alfredo Suarez, and Ricardo Anselmini were sentenced to life in prison for murder, while Gustavo Daniel Fernandez received a lighter sentence of 25 years. It is unclear whether Gustavo used violence. It is only known that he kidnapped Natalia. Gustavo's original sentence was 25 years in prison, but after a few years, his sentence was reduced to 15 years. In Natalia's case, a pubic hair found at the crime scene was sent for testing and was found to belong to Ricardo Panadero, a former police chief in Miramar. An attempt was made to bring Panadero to trial with additional evidence, which was ultimately successful. However, during Panadero's trial, the judge determined that the small DNA sample was not enough evidence to convict him, so Ricardo Panadero was acquitted. However, in 2019, Ricardo Panadero's previous acquittal was overturned, and he is currently awaiting trial. It is important to note that Panadero's DNA evidence is not the only aspect of Natalia's case. Several witnesses reported seeing Panadero in the car that abducted Natalia on the night of the incident. However, the judge chose to ignore this testimony, citing that some of the witnesses were homeless and were considered less credible. A new judge has since taken over and said he will consider all testimony and evidence. Despite their life sentences, the defendants were still given certain privileges. They could leave the prison for 2 hours every 15 days to maintain family ties and reintegrate into society. After public protests, this privilege was revoked. However, in 2017, they requested to leave again, and the court granted it. In October 2018, this privilege was revoked again, but was reinstated in December 2018. After that, the defendants were allowed to leave the prison for 12 hours every 15 days without wearing a location tracking bracelet. Notably, one of the defendants lived just a 5-minute walk from Natalia's mother's house. This allowed them to move freely around the city, spend time with their family, and visit various locations. Natalia's family has been trying to have the defendant's right to leave prison revoked. In 2021, the defendants applied for early release but were denied, despite their good behavior. It is important to note that Ricardo Panadero has been awaiting trial for 3 years, while Gustavo was released early after serving a short sentence. The case is filled with a sense of injustice, and a 5th DNA sample has yet to be found. Natalia's family is actively addressing these issues, but the process is slow. The case of Amanda Colley and Lindy Dobbins. On the morning of August 27, 2015, 36-year-old Amanda Colley returned home to find her house in chaos. Someone had broken into her while she was away. Her house was in disarray, with boxes knocked over, trash cans emptied, and many items broken or damaged, with glass strewn everywhere. Amanda panicked and checked her phone, which had many missed calls and messages from her ex-husband that she didn't want to reply to. At 5:30 a.m., she called her boyfriend and the police for help. She had recently started dating a man named Lamar. At that time, Lamar was driving his pickup truck down a route that led to her house. Meanwhile, the police were on their way to the scene. One officer arrived to assess the danger of the situation. He was to talk to Amanda and assess the damage to her property. The police assessed the situation and left after Amanda chose not to file a formal complaint. Before the police left her home around 9 a.m. that morning, someone came to Amanda's aid. The first person to visit was Lindy Dobbins, Amanda's best friend. At 39 and a mother of 3, Lindy had taken the morning off work to be with Amanda and support her. Lindy was a kind person who always helped others in difficult situations. After a while, their mutual friend Rachel Hendricks joined them. She had dropped her kids off at school and decided to support Amanda since she had some free time. By this time, Lamar was already at Amanda's house. The four of them gathered at Amanda's house, watching the chaos and discussing what had happened while considering their next steps. Amanda was still in shock from the incident and realized that she needed to consult a lawyer before reporting her ex-husband, who she believed was responsible. Eventually, Amanda's ex-husband called her again. This time, she chose to answer, leading to a 14-minute conversation. While they were in the living room, they suddenly heard the sound of shattering glass. A few minutes later, a police officer stopped Lamar on the street. He was running frantically, not paying attention to where he was going, trying to escape Amanda's house. According to him, he left the living room as soon as the shooting started, went down to the laundry room, and then fled through the garage, which was partially open. Lamar reported that unexpectedly, gunfire erupted at Amanda's house. He informed the police officer that he thought the shots were fired from outside the house. He did not observe anyone inside being hit by bullets. He was unable to give the police specific details. Lamar is certain that the attacker is targeting him, leading him to believe that the women inside the house are alive. The situation was dire. Minutes after Lamar left the house, the other women tried to escape. Rachel ran through the living room and through the broken glass front door. She spotted the neighbor's house next door and quickly ran over to hide. After escaping, Rachel called 911 to report that she had escaped but had injured her arm. She suspected that an armed attack had occurred at her friend's house and knew exactly who was likely responsible. Realizing the danger, Rachel instinctively ran away when Lamar told them to hide. She was shocked when the gunfire continued. While speaking to the police, Rachel expressed her concern for her friends and urged the police to come quickly to save them. In the next few minutes, 2 more calls came into the police station, one from Amanda and one from her friend Lindy. However, during the calls, they only screamed while the gunshots echoed in the background. The police immediately went to Amanda Colley's house to rescue her. Gunshot wounds to Lindy's arms and legs showed that she was trying to defend herself from her attacker. Unfortunately, her efforts were futile. The attacker had fired a full magazine at her, indicating a clear intention to kill. Lindy was discovered at the end of a long corridor, lying in a pool of blood. It seems she tried to escape, but was killed before she could get away. Rachel stated that just a few seconds before the shooting started, she looked toward the backyard of the house. There, along the garden path, she saw the outline of a man who then pulled out a weapon through the glass door. A group of people stood behind him. The glass was quite thin, preventing her from seeing exactly who was there. The police corroborated her account by analyzing the locations of the bullet holes in the backyard. On the path, they found several unused cartridges, which were identified as deli caliber bullets. Lamar went back to Amanda's house. When the police arrived, he felt assured that they would have the situation under control. Lamar mentioned that he heard gunshots coming from the backyard and believed that he was the perpetrator's target. At that moment, he urged everyone to run. Although he did not see the perpetrator, he suspected that the perpetrator was Amanda's ex-husband, who had spoken to her on the phone just minutes before the attack. Rachel explained that they didn't have enough time to react as quickly as Lamar, so she and Lindy decided to hide in the pantry. She heard Amanda on the other side, probably trying to find a place to hide and possibly running to the bathroom. Seconds later, Rachel heard the front door being broken down. At that moment, the intruder entered the house. He approached the pantry, tried to open the door, and found that it was locked from the inside. The attacker wanted to know where Amanda's boyfriend was. Rachel and Lindy replied that he wasn't there while continuing to hold the door. The intruder then fired through the door, hitting Rachel's arm, causing her to lose her balance. Linda's leg was now injured, causing her to scream in pain. Amanda was also injured but still alive and screaming near the bathroom. In that brief moment, Rachel jumped up and ran from the house. According to Rachel, the attacker could have been Amanda's ex-husband, James Terry Colley. She recognized his familiar voice behind the door. A few minutes later, James's father called the police to report that his son had just confessed to him that he had caught his wife with a friend. At that point, the police arrived at the house. After the attack, James fled the scene. K-9 units were deployed to locate James. They followed James's scent to a nearby street. During the search, a cell phone was found, which was likely left behind by James. Unfortunately, the police were unable to identify the vehicle in which he drove away. He had disappeared from the scene of the crime. The area was searched with specially trained dogs and helicopters, but these efforts yielded no results. Despite an extensive search that lasted several hours, James remained at large, posing a threat to public safety. Fortunately, police arrested James later that evening while he was driving his sister's car. During a search of the car, police discovered a shotgun and 2 Delroy and PGO caliber handguns in the passenger seat, along with a large amount of ammunition. A subsequent examination of the gun confirmed that the bullets matched those found at the crime scene and in Amanda and Lindy's bodies. In addition, glass fragments identical to those found in Amanda's home were discovered. After his arrest, James refused to cooperate with the investigation, claiming that he could not recall anything from the time of the tragic events. Further investigation revealed that James and Amanda had been married for over 8 years and had 2 children. Their relationship then began to deteriorate, leading to their divorce. James moved to his sister's house, 20 km away from their family home, where Amanda and the children continued to live. As the divorce proceedings progressed over the following months, they encountered many difficulties regarding child custody and property division. The two then decided to start new chapters in their lives. James began dating a co-worker named Emmy, while Amanda pursued a relationship with Lamar, another co-worker from the sporting goods company. Even though the couple's relationship had completely broken down, James was still possessive of his ex-wife Amanda. He suspected that she was seeing someone new and called her several times to find out who it was. Amanda did not share the truth because she feared it would lead to serious problems. As a result, James became increasingly angry and aggressive. He called her frequently, becoming so intrusive that Amanda felt compelled to go to court to get a restraining order to protect herself. The weekend before the attack, Amanda's neighbor and close friend took a photo of a man mowing the lawn in front of Amanda's house. The man was identified as her new boyfriend, Lamar. When James found out, he tried to contact Amanda, insulting her and demanding to know who she was seeing. Amanda lied, claiming that the man in the photo was just a landscaper. James was going crazy because Amanda had found someone new. Early on the morning of August 27, he planned a terrible act. Surveillance cameras from nearby homes did not capture the moment James, her ex-husband, entered Amanda's house. This was not surprising, since he had lived there for a long time and was familiar with the areas not covered by the cameras. He approached the house undetected from the backyard, just as he had intended. The James entered the house around 3 a.m., but found it empty. Frustrated, he started to create chaos, throwing items around and dumping trash from the kitchen bins. He broke the TV and damaged several costly appliances. This destruction seemed aimed at upsetting Amanda. As he caused this damage, he was also getting ready for the terrible actions that were to come. James was looking for evidence that Amanda was having an affair with another man. Eventually, he discovered something that confirmed his suspicions and made him even angrier. At 4:00 a.m., he went to Mike's house, who lived across the street. James knocked loudly, shouted and swore, while discussing Amanda in an angry tone. Mike showed James everything he had found in Amanda's house, including some intimate toys that James had never seen before with his ex-wife. Mike knew that James had been given a restraining order prohibiting him from having access to his home or his ex-wife. However, James had violated the order. This could have resulted in a court hearing and possible arrest. Mike tried to calm James down by offering him a drink and suggesting that he go home and rest to avoid making any more impulsive decisions. Unfortunately, James ignored this advice and decided to go to court to resolve the issues related to his first restraining order violation. On the way, he called his father to tell him about the damage he had done to Amanda's home. His father reprimanded him and urged him not to be stupid again. James was arrested and charged with 2 counts of premeditated murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, robbery, and aggravated stalking for violating a court order. James maintained his innocence, claiming amnesia, and was taken to the county jail to await a hearing. The prosecution needed to prove that James attacked Amanda, her friends, and Lamar. Although there was no direct evidence linking him to the crimes, there were multiple witnesses present who confirmed that he was the perpetrator. Police pieced together James's movements on the day of the attack. James arrived at Mike's house around 4:00 a.m. and stayed with Mike until 4:45 a.m. After leaving, James went to his sister's house, where he lived with his sister and father, about 15 minutes from James's old home. After returning to his sister's house, he retrieved a gun and ammunition before committing the crime. Prosecutors allege that the motive for the attack was a photo he had taken of Lamar at Amanda's house. Police searched James's cell phone and computer. They learned that at approximately 5:00 a.m., he began texting Amanda. He had tried to call her just 1 minute before the first gunshots and had called Amanda 22 times before that. Up until that point, Amanda had tried to avoid answering his calls, but after seeing the state of her house, she decided to pick up the phone. During the call, she accused James of robbing and vandalizing her house. Amanda had asked James to leave her alone. It was clear that she had done everything she could to avoid contact with James. She even suggested that she would keep quiet about his vandalizing her house if he would finally leave her life. The defense team is determined to fight the charges. They argue that James was prescribed medication to treat anxiety and depression, which was supposed to help him, but when taken together, caused unpredictable side effects. This reaction was made worse the night before the attack, especially after he had consumed beer and strong drinks. On the evening of August 26, after returning home, he took another medication that was supposed to help him sleep. He fell asleep but woke up a few hours later. The defense argued that the combination of the drugs he had taken and the alcohol had contributed to his uncontrollable behavior. However, James had plenty of time before the incident. The effects of these substances should have diminished, and he even attended the trial that morning without arousing any suspicion. After leaving the courthouse, he began calling and texting Amanda. Before arriving at his wife's house, he filled up his car with gas. The prosecutor's office believes this is a sign that he was preparing to flee the state, suggesting that he had planned ahead. During a search of the car, police found a shotgun, 2 handguns, and a large amount of ammunition of various calibers. These items were scattered throughout the vehicle, indicating that they had been hastily discarded. Police also found the same drugs that the defense had mentioned. The attorneys prepared expert witnesses in pharmacology and psychiatry to to demonstrate that the combination of drugs James was taking could impair his ability to think rationally and make decisions. According to the attorneys, this impairment ruled out premeditated culpability, suggesting that James's actions could have been a spontaneous outburst of aggression beyond his control. The pharmacologist stated that the combination of these drugs was likely to cause amnesia. Therefore, James may not actually remember the incident. During police questioning, Mike provided detailed evidence of James coming to his house that morning. James was a bit strange. Mike knew that James was trying to cope with Amanda's new relationship after their divorce. Mike could not understand why James still wanted to possess her even though they were divorced. James became obsessed and sent pictures of Amanda's new boyfriend to her, which led to a tragic outcome. Police carefully examined text messages exchanged between James and Mike. It appeared that Mike was telling the truth. James harbored resentment, not only toward his ex-wife, but also toward her friends. He specifically blamed Amanda's best friend, Lindy, for turning Amanda against him, which fueled his hatred for her. Evidence showed that James had collected a weapon just before leaving the house, the prosecutor's office said. Police also noted that James' father had tried to intervene and stop him from doing so, but his efforts were unsuccessful. The key witness for the defense was James's sister, Rhonda, who lived with him at the time. However, she was on vacation in Italy during the attack and returned 2 weeks later. Rhonda disputed the prosecutor's assertion that James was planning the attack. She believed that the two guns found in the car were there by chance, as she had been carrying them for a while. The defense argued that this indicated the attack was impulsive and unintentional. In contrast, the prosecution thought Rhonda was merely trying to defend younger brother, with whom she had always had a close relationship. The prosecution pointed out inconsistencies in Rhonda's testimony, especially regarding the type of handgun she reported having in the car. This raised the jury's suspicions. James faced the possibility of the death penalty for the assault. James's defense team aimed to reduce the severity of the sentence. The only sure way to spare James's life was to contest the premeditated murder charges, which could have carried a sentence of life in prison without parole. However, the prosecution was determined not to negotiate and refused to offer a plea deal. They argued that James, who had taken 2 lives and seriously injured 2 others, deserved the death penalty. The defense argued that James had no intention of harming Amanda or her friends. However, when he arrived at Amanda's home, an incident occurred that angered him. It is believed that there was an argument between the men, which may have caused James to start shooting. However, surviving witnesses, Rachel and Lamar, claimed that no conversation occurred and that no one provoked him. On the other hand, the prosecution argued strongly that James did not arrive at the home by accident. Instead, he returned to his sister's home to get weapons and ammunition for the murder, suggesting that his actions were premeditated. The key piece of evidence in the case was a phone call between James and Amanda that took place shortly before the shooting began. This call was played to the jury in court and lasted 14 minutes. During the conversation, Amanda attempted to end her relationship with James. She cried and begged him, trying to intimidate him by mentioning the restraining order and threatening to call the police if he continued to stalk her. It was clear that she had been enduring his harassment for a long time, but he paid no attention to her suffering. After both sides presented their arguments, the jury began deliberating their verdict. 2 hours later, they reached a unanimous decision, finding James Terry Colley, 38, guilty on all 7 counts, including burglary. However, the case was not over. 2 weeks later, the same jury reconvened to decide whether James should receive the death penalty. The defense team remained hopeful. They wanted to prove that the combination of drugs he had been taking could have caused side effects, such as memory loss. Experts, including a forensic psychiatrist and a pharmacist, supported this claim, arguing that James suffered from parasomnias, which meant he could not have been aware and could not remember the events that had occurred. Psychiatrists claim that people with parasomnias can walk, drive, and perform deliberate actions. However, the prosecutor's office has disputed these claims by presenting court records showing that James had been in court the morning before the attack. He had interacted with several people and there was no unusual behavior. James appeared calm, with no signs of slowing down, confusion, or depression, common signs of people with parasomnias. The prosecution successfully convinced the jury of James's guilt for causing the deaths of Amanda and Lindy. The jury unanimously decided that he should receive the death penalty. A third hearing then took place, where the court gave the defense one last chance to present any compelling evidence that might lead to a reduction in the death sentence. During this hearing, James took the stand for himself for the first time, describing the incident as a terrible accident. However, his argument lacked credibility. The defense attorneys also failed to present any substantial evidence, leading to James Terry Colley's death sentence being upheld. He is currently in prison awaiting execution by lethal injection